DC Tyrant. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 76. Simple. After acquiring Noid Biotech, Badi started to reorganize the company and change the name to Cosmic Biotech. He paid off all the company's debts and employees' wages, thus wasting $7 million. Then he met with the Daily Planet and placed advertisements in the Daily Planet and on TV. Then he went to several biological companies and bought some older cell reactors, electrophysiological instruments, patch clamps, stereotaxic machines, slicers, animal live imaging, culture media, immunodiagnostic tests, antibodies, neural testing machines, culture dishes, pipette sterilization barrels, refrigerated centrifuges, incubators, electrophoresis tanks, microploid readers, ordinary PCR, liquid nitrogen containers, DNA sequencers / gene analyzers, and a series of new and old biological experimental equipment. Finally, Badi took Luther to buy a lot of computer parts, which was all the money Badi got from the suicide slum. We only have $12,000 left. We spent all the $23 million in one day. We even owe a huge sum of $5 million. The company was mortgaged as soon as it was bought. Luther's young face was slightly sad. He had never seen so much money, nor had he owned so much money, nor had he owed so much money. Seeing the money being thrown like water, he was simply gasping for air. Although he knew that Badi must have a use for buying things like this, he still felt heartbroken. So much money. Luther, who was used to being poor, felt heartbroken for the first time. This was the money. Badi was stunned for a moment. Obviously, he didn't expect that Luther, who was supposed to be rich enough to rival a country in the future, would be like this. This is really interesting. He laughed loudly. What are you afraid of? In a week, the whole metropolis will know about Cosmic Biotechnology Co. Limited and me, Bamulodi, and will automatically put money into my pocket. Luther muttered, I don't know yet. The heart disease specific medicine, diabetes specific medicine, and Sidophon have not been clinically verified. If something unexpected happens, we will immediately become the fastest bankrupt and the fastest to go to jail. Among so many diseases, Americans spend the most money on diabetes. The most important thing is that this is a lifelong disease. Badi can come up with medicine to completely treat it, but it is not necessary. It is enough to get some quick-acting specific medicines and continuously launch second generation and third generation updated medicines. He is not here to save the masses. Of course, the heart disease specific medicine will save some people. These specific medicines that will appear in the future were taken out by him in advance to earn a lot of money and fame for himself. As for Sidophon, commonly known as Viagra, it was taken out by Badi to care about the health of American men. It is powerful, mighty, and fierce. Badi held Luther's head, pressed his neck down, and ruffled his hair vigorously, facing the sun, grinning. I won't fail. Badi smiled in the sun. The world will become more and more interesting because of his arrival. Badi took Luther and stepped into the Galaxy Hotel again. Luther felt heartbroken as soon as he stepped in. The last $12,000 would be used to treat two bosses in the underworld. In the remaining week, Luther felt that he would have to eat grain seeds again and return to the diet in the suicide slums, eating moldy sweet potatoes. Luther, wanted to go out to the metropolis to eat and drink well, enjoy life, and become a rich man. Now, he felt that he had met the wrong master, especially the generous Badi, who ordered the most luxurious banquet room on the roof. Luther felt dizzy, and the last $12,000 was not enough to pay the bill. Boss, we don't have enough money. Luther handed over the deposit of 10,000 yuan, and his hands were shaking. He swore that, if he had to stay in this hotel to wash dishes, he would be the first to run away. The boss's steps were too big, and he felt that his balls had been torn, rotten, and exploded. Don't worry, someone will be willing to join Bamulodi tonight and dedicate everything. If you are lucky, maybe both gangs will be in your pocket. Badi's mouth curled up into a smile. Luther was surprised. The boss seemed to have planned it in advance. At night, on the upper floors of the Galaxy Hotel, you can see the banquet hall of half of the nearby metropolis. Standing on the balcony with floor-to-ceiling glass, it feels like you have a bird's eye view of the world and conquer the world. Under the gusts of wind, people feel heroic and passionate. Tobias Wheel was dusty and took heavy steps. He was as big as two people standing side by side. He was about 2 meters tall, just like a mountain. He was abnormally bloated and powerful, as if he had no neck, with thick hands and feet, pale skin, and frightening eyes. The row of black suits behind him was murderous, as if he had just killed someone. The two did not exchange too much pleasantries. Tobias Wheel said directly in a deep voice, "What can I get?" "Restore to a normal person, strength, invulnerability." Badi said that, when he sent the invitation to his father, he also sent a letter to him. He has mastered the temperament of each gang leader in the metropolis. He often stands by the window, to bask in the sun, not just to bask in the sun, but also to open his super hearing, to hear a lot of information in a targeted manner, and to organize it all in his brain, before deciding to act. Therefore, in Luther's view, Badi always looks like he is in control of the situation, full of confidence, and has never failed or frustrated. In fact, Badi had already collected enough information and only attacked at the last decisive moment. Whether it is buying biological experimental equipment or advertising on TV, it is much cheaper than the market. Although Luther saw Badi spending money like water and felt sad, even he was willing to spend the money, even if he felt sad, because wrestling alone was enough to make 3 or 4 times the profit, which was really shocking. Tobias Wheeler's breathing became heavy. He longed for more powerful strength, but at the same time, he also longed for power. "If you don't agree, you won't live for more than 2 months. I will purge Metropolis in a month, and the underground world can only be ruled by me," Badi said. "I know that the Gambino Mafia was also destroyed by you, Bamulodi, last night." Tobias Wheeler's face was gloomy. He thought for a while, and then walked behind Badi. Unless he wanted to leave Metropolis, he would die as soon as Badi made a move. He knew very well that he surrendered very simply. Metropolis was so big that it always needed people to manage it. He surrendered as soon as possible. He was still a boss, but he had an emperor above him. He would make plans after gaining power. Betrayal was nothing to him. "From today on, you are my boss." He stood behind Badi and regarded himself as a younger brother. The men he brought with him were all shocked. They couldn't believe that this man who dared to kill his father and become the boss of the organization would soon become someone else's subordinate. They were shocked, but they had no other reaction except shock. Badi smiled. He sat at the dining table and said to little Luther, shrugged and spread his hands, "Look, we have money to pay the bill." Luther held his breath and stared. It was so easy to recapture a famous metropolis and the boss of the underground world who controlled 1/5 of the metropolis. Chapter 77, taking you to see the sea. Bruno Mannheim came in from the banquet hall, and his men also filed in. There were about 10 of them, wearing suits and carrying pistols on their waists. He was tall and strong, and more fierce than most people. Of course, he could not compete with a monster like Tobias Wheeler, who was similar to an alien. He and Tobias Wheeler had always been rivals as the second generation of 2 gangs in the metropolis. He heard the conversation between Badi and Tobias Wheeler, and as soon as he came in, he saw his old rival Tobias Wheeler standing behind Badi. He sneered, "Tobias, you have fallen, and you actually want to rely on the worms from the slums to quell the unrest caused by your killing of your father last night." Tobias was behind Badi and gave him a cold look. No one knew what Badi promised in his letter to him. This was completely worth it for him to give up his position as the boss and follow Badi's men. They are old and can't keep up with the times. "Ugly, you should persuade your father to abdicate. Otherwise, let me do it." Tobias sneered cruelly. Bruno Mannheim's full name is Bruno Ugly Mannheim, but because his middle name is not very nice, he usually just discards it. Only Tobias often mocks his name and deliberately calls him by his middle name. Just like Badi, his full name is Bamulodi Jun Tratescu, and ordinary people will call him Bamulodi Tratescu, and the middle word Jun is a less common name. Bruno Mannheim's eyes flashed with ferocity, and his body suddenly tensed up, like a leopard ready to run and burst out, then calmed down, squinted at Tobias, and said mockingly, "A dog that has lost its home is barking. Your Organization 100's territory, the international gang, will help you manage it." Tobias looked at Bruno Mannheim coldly, and when he was about to speak, Badi raised his hand to stop him, so he shut up and stood behind Badi, looking at Bruno Mannheim like a clown. Bruno Mannheim frowned, and Tobias' attitude made him unpredictable. What was the background of this Bamulodi? He easily recaptured Tobias of Organization 100 and made him kill his father to seize the throne. This was simply a joke. Mr. Bruno Mannheim, please don't think about that territory. Organization 100 no longer exists. That's my Bamulodi place, Badi said with a smile. He poured 3 glasses of wine and handed one to Tobias. He clinked glasses with him and took a sip. Then he made a gesture of invitation, asking Bruno Mannheim to take a seat and have dinner together. Bruno Mannheim didn't appreciate it. He stood there with a cold face and narrowed his eyes. Bamulodi? Why? Just because you created yourself as an invulnerable god in the suicide slum? Badi paused in drinking. He realized that Bruno Mannheim and his people still regarded him as an ordinary person who would die if shot by a bullet. No wonder. People, after all, have never seen ghosts and don't know the depth of the world. Badi put down the wine glass directly, walked to Tobias, smiled and said, "Follow me," then put his hand on his back and pushed him to walk passively. Tobias's face changed. He was as big as 2 people standing side by side. He was huge and weighed nearly 200 kilograms. But he was pushed by Badi with the back of his hand and couldn't help but move. What kind of power was this? Badi pushed Tobias in front of Bruno Mannheim and put his hand on Bruno's shoulder. In fact, he also wanted to put his hand on Tobias's shoulder, but Tobias was too big, so he couldn't push him. "What do you want to do?" Bruno's body suddenly tensed up. He struggled for a while, but found that he couldn't get rid of the hand on his shoulder. It was like steel holding him tightly. He was shocked and looked at Tobias beside him. They both saw shock in each other's eyes. "Stop, Master Mannheim. Let go." The men behind him pulled out their pistols from their waists and shouted loudly, pointing at Badi. Badi pushed them and held their shoulders, leading them to the balcony. The French windows were open, and in front of them was a bustling, colorful city with car headlights constantly flowing. A little further away, there were bright lights flickering on the sea. There were yachts and cruise ships on the sea. People were enjoying themselves near the harbor. The slightly salty sea breeze blew into the balcony, blowing up the delicate golden curtains on both sides. Badi gently inhaled the smell of the sea brought by the airflow. The sea breeze gently caressed his face, making him feel a little fluffy and itchy. He laughed out loud. Bruno's eyes calmed down, and he said in a deep voice, "What do you want to do? This place is 120 meters above the ground, about 40 floors. Let's jump down together, and I'll take you flying," Badi said with a smile, facing the night sea breeze, ruffling his hair, and then paused. He couldn't fly yet, so he said, "I'll take you to see the sea of the metropolis." Bruno looked grim and looked at Badi, staring at him for a while. He said fiercely, "If you dare to jump, we will die together." He didn't think that anyone would be so stupid as to dare to jump from the 40th floor, 120 meters high. He thought that this was just Batista's bluff. People who came out of the suicide slums were indeed fierce, but it was impossible to make Bruno Mannheim surrender like this. Bruno Mannheim had been in the international gang. What had he not experienced? It couldn't scare me. Tobias's thick white face pursed his lips tightly, his eyes were filled with horror, and he asked in a deep voice, "Boss, will I die?" "No." Batista still smiled. Tobias nodded at the big white face and said solemnly, "Then I believe you, boss. Then, let's go." Haha. Batista took a step, laughed in the slightly fishy and salty sea breeze, stepped on the stone fence of the balcony, and jumped out with the 2 people beside him in the windy sky. Feeling the sensation of jumping up and his feet off the ground, Bruno held his breath tightly, with a look of shock on his face. It was really jumping. Both of them were suffocating. 120 meters high, 40 floors high. What would happen if they fell down? They would become meat paste. Bruno was at a loss, his hands and feet were stiff, and fear rose from his heart. He could no longer think. Bruno and Tobias held their breath and stared. The strong wind pierced their noses and eyes like a knife, causing their tear glands to overflow with tears, which were then blown away by the strong wind. The strong wind was about to tear their faces apart. Their eyes were immediately filled with blood, and the bloodshot rose to the whites of their eyes. The fluorescent lampposts on the ground, the vehicles, pedestrians, and trees on both sides of the street gradually grew larger in front of him. This was a kind of speechless fear. The fear of suffocation descended. The brain could not extract oxygen to maintain thinking, and the head stopped at the ground that was getting closer and closer in front of him. Their men behind them, including Luther, were stunned. It jumped so fast that they didn't react. So, it really jumped. Badi pressed his hands firmly on their backs. A force field appeared slightly from his hands, tightly clinging to the two of them, so that they wouldn't fly around in the air. This was a physical skill that he had experimented with a dead female killer a few days ago. Every cell in the human body has a magnetic field. When the cells are strong enough, this magnetic field is connected through every cell in the body and can even form a controllable force field on the body. In addition, the reason why Kryptonians can fly is because they can unify the force field of their bodies and control the force field like water shoes, erupting the power of the force field from every pore, getting rid of gravity, and flying into the sky. Of course, Badi still can't fly now, but he can control the force field weakly, control his body more freely, make himself lighter, jump higher and farther, and use the force field to absorb the bodies of the two people. This is easy. Before death, there is a blank, and the revolving lantern of life is fake. The fear of death comes in an instant, and there is no extra time to think. The two faced the downward momentum, and could only passively be blown by the strong wind, until they could not breathe. They stared with their eyes wide open, and their hearts began to beat faster. Facing the ground getting closer and closer, the car roof getting bigger and bigger, the trees, the street lights, and the marble floor, the two had no room to think. Badi's windbreaker fluttered wildly behind him, which was the loudest sound besides the wind. Haha. He laughed in the air, looking at the stunned expressions of the two, and couldn't help laughing. Then he reached the ground. Badi's body force field gushed out from under his feet. He pushed the two people, as if he could easily take 2 steps on the ground. The whole person had a light and strange beauty, pushing the two people's backs to fly up into the sky again. It was completely like sliding smoothly in a U, and then flying into the sky, and becoming a point far away. Boom. Although Badi seemed to be light, the ground was still stepped into a big pit by the huge force. The marble cracked, the car on the roadside shook continuously, and the fire hydrant exploded with a bang, and the white water column rushed into the sky. The people nearby screamed in fear. Chapter 78 Death Knell. Suicide Slum. This is a basement. The dim light hanging overhead cannot illuminate everything. In the dark corners, there are piles of various old radios, CDs, and spare parts collected by the owner. They were originally neatly arranged and could be sold for a few dollars, but now they are all messed up, damaged, and completely worthless. Slade officially put on his two-color mask, half yellow and half black. He got rid of General Vic and changed his name. In the dim basement, a cold light suddenly flashed. There was a sound of a sharp blade being unsheathed. A little finger flew up. The young man who was tied to the chair with ropes suddenly sweated profusely on his face and gritted his teeth in pain. But he refused to wail, staring at the bell with hateful eyes. The bell shook the samurai sword in his hand. The movement was too fast, so that the blood could not keep up with the speed. The blade was cold and sharp, without a trace of blood. He was wearing a dark-colored mesh-tight bulletproof vest, with close-fitting combat weapons on his thighs and waist. His masked figure looked like an evil ghost. In the dimly lit basement, his tall body obscured the figure of the tied young man, and the shadow covered him, which was extremely intimidating. He has only been here for 2 months, and he already has such loyal subordinates, Deathbell said coldly. Since he learned that Badi was in the suicide slum, he left General Vic and planned to fight Badi alone. He was very angry about his failure in the Underground Research Institute and his death at the hands of Badi. He was an elite soldier and was unwilling to be defeated by Badi. Now that he had the same power as Badi back then, He longed to defeat him again, defeat him, kill him, and make himself the most elite and powerful person again. But he didn't expect that when he prepared everything and found the suicide slum, Badi had just gone to the industrial area of the metropolis and missed him perfectly. In order to find Badi's location, he captured a small leader and planned to torture him to extract a confession. However, he still didn't expect that this so-called gang leader was tough enough. Facing his questioning, intimidation and torture, he said nothing. Is it worth sacrificing your life for him? He has only recruited you for 2 months. Deathbell said coldly, but in his heart he was shocked by heavy thoughts. What kind of deification and madness could make a man who had only been recaptured for 2 months die for Badi? He had never been able to see through Badi. What kind of charm did he have? Jenny was willing to become a monster for him. These people in the slums would rather die than reveal his whereabouts. The young man who was tied to the chair and suffered the pain of the broken finger suddenly had a crazy expression on his face. He roared hoarsely and fanatically, "It's worth it, it's worth it." He brought hope, faith, and survival. You, a selfish person, have no right to say him. In fact, the young man had more to say in his heart. He saved his mother. If the boss hadn't snatched a quota for bone marrow transplantation from a rich man, his mother would have died long ago. If he hadn't set the rules for the suicide slum, his brother would have been disemboweled and his internal organs taken out and sold. He was grateful to Badi, infinitely grateful, and regarded him as an idol and faith, not only because he made his family survive, but also because he helped him find the golden path to move forward in his confused life. People who have not survived in the suicide slum cannot imagine the humblest people, the heart that wants to embrace the light and yearns for the light. Now such a person appears to lead them. The towering figure, standing high on the Tower of Babel, overlooking the world with a smile, is the faith worth pursuing in his life. Deathbell's heart shuddered, his eyes narrowed slightly, and a fierce light burst out. He was shocked by the young man's belief in Badi, and at the same time, a mixed feeling of anger spread from the bottom of his heart. Every time someone praised Badi, he felt even smaller and inferior to him. This feeling made Deathbell's heart mad with anger. The whole world seemed to revolve around Badi, and a surge of anger burst out of his chest. "I will kill him and tear him off the altar," Deathbell shouted coldly in anger. He raised his samurai sword and no longer wanted to interrogate the young man. This young man made him feel disgusted. This fanatical expression towards Badi made him sick. The eyes of the tied young man flashed with crazy enthusiasm, blood surging all over his body, and hideous blue veins burst out. His face was still madly red, and he shouted at the tip of the sword, "For Bamulodi." The voice echoed strongly in the basement, and the echo shook the wall, so that a little dust overflowed. This madness made Deathbell's face change. This was much crazier, more fanatical, and more terrifying than he thought. "Damn monster. Bamulodi, what on earth did you do?" Just when the tip of Deathbell's sword was about to pierce the young man's chest, there was a sudden sound of footsteps coming from outside the door. It was the sound of footsteps running violently. The door of the basement was kicked open with a bang, tearing the wooden bolt. It was Leon. After killing people in the suicide slums, he quickly grew from a boy to a man, with a straight back, and the ability to shoulder responsibilities. Leon's face was tense, staring at the figure of Deathbell, and yelled, "Stop." He was puzzled by Andy's disappearance, and came to his house to find him. He didn't expect it to turn out like this. If it weren't for Andy's words for Bamulodi, he would have left. Leon ran forward, his heart pounding. Before Deathbell could stab forward, the tip of the sword withdrew. The cold tip of the sword suddenly cut through the air, and appeared at Leon's neck, stopping Leon in his tracks. "What do you want?" Leon glanced at Andy, and breathed a sigh of relief, when he saw that Andy was not in danger of life. Then he stared at Deathbell's one eye. The one-eyed eyes were cold and his voice was cold. "Bamulodi, where is he?" Leon's breathing stagnated for a moment, and he stared at Deathbell with a solemn and serious expression. After a long while, the two looked at each other without giving in. Leon said, "I tell you, you found the wrong person. He doesn't know the location of the boss." After Leon finished speaking, he boldly stretched out his right hand and pushed towards the blade. But to his shock, he couldn't move the blade at all. From a physics point of view, if someone points a sword at you and you use your right hand to push the sword away, you only need a little force, or even the strength of a finger, to push the blade sideways. But now, even if Leon used all the strength of his arm, he couldn't move the tip of the sword at all. What does this prove? The masked man in front of him already possesses far more power than humans. As an ordinary person, Leon is like facing a mountain. Leon's pupils contracted, and he was horrified. He knew instantly that this enemy was something they could not deal with. He was a boss level person, a superhuman with power beyond that of ordinary people. He was horrified and moved quickly. When he couldn't push the sword, he moved away from the tip of the sword. He was bold and courageous, not afraid of the sudden killing of the death knell. Even if he was at a disadvantage, he still straightened his back and faced the enemy without fear, showing the demeanor of a great general. The death knell was slightly awed. Leon actually gave him the feeling of seeing the former General Vic. He sheathed his sword and looked at him. Leon walked in front of Andy. Andy glared at him angrily. "Leon, you betrayed Bamulodi." Bamulodi refers to an existence like a utopia. Bamulodi has the power to lead them into utopia. Leon did not refute, but ignored the injury on Andy's hand and hit Andy's face with a right hook, which swollen one side of his angry face. Then he rolled up the clothes on his chest with his fist, leaned close to his face, and growled fiercely, "Have you forgotten what the boss said? Do as much as you can do. What we need is to study, get a doctorate, a master's degree, and more knowledge. We need to change more than just a little bit. Do you think a little bit of courage will be useful to the boss? Do you think the stupid and suicidal loyalty is useful? Does the boss need it? Does he need it? Tell me, does the boss need it?" Leon rolled up the clothes on Andy's chest, roared with a ferocious face, hating him for not being able to make progress. Andy held his face and gritted his teeth and had no way to refute. This kind of loyalty is stupid. Badi gave them a broader future. Let them study harder and they will have a greater role in the future. Instead of dying for this kind of boring thing, just to know Badi's location and not willing to confess. This is simply stupid. Badi even said that if someone deliberately looks for him, he will generously tell them the location. But Andy still subconsciously wants to protect Badi, the man who gave him everything. Leon was gruff and glared at Andy. After a while, he calmed down and turned to the death knell with a cold face, saying, "Boss, Binor Biotechnology Co. Limited in the Metropolitan Noah Industrial Zone." The death knell sneered and walked out of the basement. "I look forward to your reaction when his head is hung in the suicide slum." Leon trembled, gritted his teeth, and inserted his fist into his palm. All this is because they are not yet able to protect Bamulodi, the town of Stone. A military helicopter landed outside the town. Surrounded by towering giant sequoia trees, Lieutenant General Sam Ryan stepped out of the helicopter and walked into the town. A young madman ran past him, shouting and talking nonsense, holding mud and shouting excitedly, hey, I won the Pulitzer Prize. Hey, I won the Pulitzer Prize. Hey, I won the Pulitzer Prize." Chapter 79 Sam Lane's Investigation. Nevada, the town of Stone. A camouflaged helicopter that anyone could tell was a military helicopter stirred the airflow and landed here. Just like the day 2 years ago when a meteor fell and almost caused a wildfire, it broke the tranquility of this quiet ordinary town. Sam Ryan stepped out of the helicopter, the whirring noise of the propeller stirring. The airflow gradually stirred up the dust and sand and spread far away. When the propeller stopped turning, the diffuse dust and sand slowly flowed and became silent. It was a day with blazing flames and the sun in the sky. He came out of the helicopter. His eyes were slightly stinging in the face of the glare, and he squinted slightly and looked into the distance. The sun shone down, and the giant sequoia trees standing in the distance were tall and thick, forming a natural landscape and barrier, resisting strong winds and sand, and protecting this town. The town was also caught off guard by their sudden arrival. Some naughty children had already run to report to the town public security bureau and the mayor of the town. More people gradually gathered together to watch the excitement. It was strange why there were military people in Stone Town. "Lieutenant General, this is an unusual action of General Vic 2 years ago. He suddenly came here to help the town put out the wildfire," the adjutant reported. Sam Ryan ignored the crowd standing in the distance and walked towards the town, saying as he walked, "Firefighting? That's not what he should do." Yes, 2 years ago, a meteorite fell in the giant sequoia forest and almost caused a wildfire. Fortunately, General Vic passed by and arrived. But what's strange is that General Vic and his team are nearly 4 hours away from here. They just happened to arrive here at the same time and put out the wildfire. Then they led the troops away, as if they came here on purpose, and then left again. The adjutant continued to report, raising a puzzling point. Sam Ryan raised his eyebrows. The meteorite and General Vic unexpectedly reminded him of many things. Could it be that General Vic knew that what fell here was not a meteorite, but something else, so he led his troops here? What did he get? It reminded him of the biological warrior created by General Vic, Bamulodi. Sam Ryan thought it was very likely that General Vic had obtained the biotechnology left behind by aliens. These things also existed in Area 51, but they were rare and broken, not many. If this was the case, it was actually reasonable. In Sam Ryan's mind, he consciously connected everything and made guesses and associations. If this was the case, then as long as he found evidence and found the alien biotechnology obtained by General Vic, it would be enough to bring General Vic down. Hiding alien biotechnology privately was not a small crime. Thinking of this, Sam Ryan's heart was filled with enthusiasm, and he was confident that he could bring down General Vic. Sam Ryan led a group of soldiers into the town of Stone. Ha ha ha, I won the Pulitzer Prize. Ha ha ha, I won the Pulitzer Prize. Ha ha ha, I won the Pulitzer Prize. A sloppy young man, covered in mud, with some of the mud cracked and stuck to his body and face. He held the Pulitzer Prize he made out of mud in his hand and ran past Sam Lane with excitement and laughter. He left mud footprints all the way, and mud powder flew everywhere. Sam Lane just paused for a moment, let the crazy young man run first, and then continued to walk with the group. The people watching behind him started to talk about it. "Mike, it's noon, he hasn't eaten yet and he's out to go crazy again. Fortunately he didn't hit anyone. I wonder what the officer is doing in this town." The people talked for a while and then dispersed. This town is so ordinary that nothing can happen. The biggest thing is that Mike often runs around with the Pulitzer Prize and shows off everywhere. Speaking of Mike, several women sighed, "What a good child. He went crazy not long after he became a reporter. It's really unpredictable, and people can go crazy at any time." Sam Lane quickly found the mayor of the town. The mayor was a 50-year-old, thick-bearded man. After checking and confirming that these people were military personnel, he had no objection to the soldiers who asked to see the records of the wildfire 2 years ago. That is, it recorded the fall of abnormal meteorites, ordinary wildfires, nothing special. "Is there anything special about this wildfire?" asked the burly mayor. He still remembered that the army came here to help put out the wildfire. Sam Ryan pondered for a while, read the wildfire records for a long time, and then asked, "Have you found even one piece of the meteorite that caused the wildfire?" "No, they were all transported away by the army," the burly mayor said. "No." Sam Ryan's eyes were thoughtful. Then he asked the burly mayor to take him to the place where the meteorite fell to take a look. The burly mayor had no objection and directly took the group of soldiers into the giant sequoia forest. They were all strong men, and they didn't have to work as hard as Mike did at the beginning, and they even got their hands and feet injured and scratched before they climbed up the hill. Nowadays, the area is already overgrown with vegetation. The pit where the Badi spacecraft crashed is even covered by weeds and shrubs. It is difficult to see anything. A group of soldiers tried their best to infer the situation and environment at that time, but it was in vain. Sam Ryan looked up at the giant sequoia trees and found something unusual. At that moment, the tall and strong trunk of the giant sequoia was rubbed off a deep piece of flesh, and a piece of it was sunken. Although the tree has been growing very hard in the past 2 years and covering the gap with bark tumors, it still looks very eye-catching. It can make the group of people imagine how much impact the meteorite brought to the giant sequoia tree. Then, according to the mechanical and directional measurements of the professionals brought, the pit covered with shrubs and weeds was found. Some soldiers climbed up the giant sequoia, cut down a pile of wood from the gap, took it down, and put it away, and others dug a lot of soil in the pit, and packed it in plastic bags. These are all to measure radiation, and maybe they can measure something. You know, the reaction of metal is very different from that of rock like meteorites. The burly mayor just looked at them strangely, not knowing why. But it was none of his business, so he ignored it. In just over an hour, the soldiers had dug enough mud and cut enough wood chips. Following the original path, they left the giant sequoia forest again. When they returned to the town of Stone, they unexpectedly saw the crazy young man Mike again, holding his Pulitzer Prize and shouting foolishly as he passed by. The rough mayor had a few traces of sadness on his face and sighed. Alas, a good child with a promising future was ruined just like that. After sighing, the rough mayor remembered that the soldier next to him seemed to be investigating the meteorite landing. So he continued. Mike wanted to shoot news that would win the Pulitzer Prize when the meteorite fell, but he fell down the hillside in the woods while chasing the meteorite, and his brain was broken. Alas, since then, he was happy to think that he had won the Pulitzer Prize and ran around the town with mud in his hands. Sam Ryan's heart moved. Then did he shoot anything? The rough mayor was stunned. I don't know about that. Sam Ryan quickly ordered the soldiers to catch Mike, who was covered in mud. When he was caught in front of him, Mike was still angry and thought that these soldiers wanted to steal his Pulitzer Prize, and he kept struggling. Did you shoot anything? Sam Ryan asked expectantly. Mike had seen soldiers before he went crazy, so he had a vague impression of people in military uniforms in his mind. This was not a good impression. He spat angrily on Sam Lane's face, muttering, "It's my Pulitzer Prize. It's my Pulitzer Prize. It's my Pulitzer Prize." Mike kicked again in his frantic struggle, almost hitting Sam Lane's lower body. It scared Sam Lane. He wiped the stinky spit on his face, his face twitching. Reporters are really annoying. Even if they are crazy, they are still annoying. When Mike struggled, the dry mud on his body cracked, and a small camera swung back and forth on his back. It was behind the dry mud, stuck to his body, and he didn't notice it at first. Now the movement was too violent, and the mud cracked and fell off, and the camera hanging on his neck swung, allowing people to see it. Sam Lane paused while wiping the spit from his face, and suddenly reached out with one hand, pulled off Mike's camera, and wiped the muddy surface of the camera excitedly, revealing a Pentax K1000 camera. He asked with a faint excitement, "You used this camera to take a picture of the meteorite, didn't you?" Mike was even more excited when he saw his camera, and his dirty black face roared wildly, "My Pulitzer Prize! My Pulitzer Prize! My Pulitzer Prize!" The burly mayor also hurried over to comfort Mike. He had watched Mike grow up, and seeing Mike like this, he felt really regretful and uncomfortable. Sam Lane's heart was so excited that it surged to his face, and the camera in his hand was shaking. He didn't expect to get it so easily. This madman must have taken a picture of something. As for why he was stupid, Sam Lane even imagined that he might have been fooled by someone. Of course, everything was in the camera. Then when he opened the back of the camera and wanted to take out the film, he was stunned. There was no film. "Where is the film?" Sam Ryan asked in surprise, and the camera in his hand was snatched back by Mike, who broke free from the soldiers. Mike held the camera tightly and declared his sovereignty. "It's my Pulitzer Prize. It's my Pulitzer Prize. It's my Pulitzer Prize." Sam Ryan looked at Mike and calmed down from his ups and downs. He was too anxious. Mike was obsessed with it. How could there be film? Even if there was, it should have been taken away by General Vic long ago. He took a deep breath and confirmed that General Vic did get something from the meteorite. Some alien biotechnology, maybe even the corpses of alien creatures. He created a biological warrior like Bamulodi, but now he is out of control. Sam Ryan sneered faintly. General Vic's days are indeed over. In any case, he didn't expect it. Bamulodi is not a biological warrior created by General Vic, but an alien. Chapter 80 Cosmic Biotechnology Co. Limited. Noah Industrial Park. This piece of land, this area, is a high-tech industrial development zone. It covers an area of 21.3 square kilometers, which is as large as 10 Franklin Parks. It originally belonged to Noah Company, and the whole piece was owned by Noah Co. Limited. But since the death of the old group of people who originally founded Noah Company, the capital distribution has been uneven, the contradictions have intensified, and the external metropolitan capitalists have long been planning to erode this huge group. However, in just a few years, this place has become a fragmented industry under the names of various capitalists in the metropolis. The entire Noah industrial park has been divided into pieces, and there is no longer the integrated environment of the original founder. And Badi has become a member here at this moment. He acquired Noah Biotechnology Co. Limited and settled here. A white-grey flat exterior wall building, 15 stories high, is rigorous and serious. The glass reflects the sunlight and has a sense of innovation. There is no doubt that even the entire biological laboratory building is designed by a special master to reflect the biological laboratory building. Badi's Universe Biotechnology Co. Limited is here, and this building is his. There were originally more than 100 researchers in the field of biotechnology, but now most of them have left. Most of them were due to unpaid wages and other reasons. Those with some skills were poached by other biological research laboratories, and those without skills also found other ways out. Only a dozen guys who were unwilling to get by without even getting paid were left. In the end, after all the wages were settled, these dozen guys who were just getting by were also fired by Badi. They happily took half a year's salary and left with a sigh of relief. It was only one day after taking over, and this place had become an empty biological laboratory building. But in less than half a day, there were more than 70 employees who became his subordinates again. Badi directly recruited a group of research assistants with research foundation at a salary 3 times higher than the market, and visited several universities in the metropolis to recruit some so-called elite biological students. The whole framework was set up in this way, and it was so fast that no one could match it. To recruit such biological researchers, all of them need to strictly sign various high-priced breach of contract agreements and sign long-term contracts, and the parties must have quite deep research knowledge. But all this was unnecessary in Badi's eyes. He seemed to have casually recruited a bunch of college students with little experience in biological research. Although they were experienced assistants, they were just assistants. They could only help with biological research, but they had no chance to take charge. Little Luther was frightened by Badi's behavior. Can they succeed? A bunch of college students with little experience in biological research. A bunch of assistants who are just assistants, and there is not even a deep researcher to help them. In addition, the contract terms are so loose that, even if they change jobs with the research products, we have no way to reasonably take back our rights and interests. Little Luther stared and shouted in dissatisfaction. Although he had never really managed any company, with his IQ, he knew that once there was any research result, it would not be a big deal for anyone here to take it and run away. What's more, the diabetes-specific drug and heart disease-specific drug, sildenafil, which they are going to launch in the future, can almost be regarded as all the funds they have obtained in the suicide slums. It is not an exaggeration to be rigorous. Now, Badi is working on computers. Badi pondered for a while, holding the crystal CPU in his hand. He raised it up to the incandescent lamp. Under the light, the crystal CPU flashed a strange circuit. In the crystal, it seemed like there was a stream of light flowing. The light was gorgeous, but the crystal was simple and ugly. He frowned. In this era, industrial science and technology were not as advanced as in later generations, so the technology he needed was still far from reaching the standard. That's the only way, Badi said softly, and his frown loosened his brows. He installed the crystal CPU on the computer host. The size of the host was 2.5 meters high and 4 meters wide. It was so huge that Luther was shocked. There were dense and complex lines inside, and various port devices and settings connected to it. Even though little Luther had read all the computer knowledge on the market, there were still many parts that he didn't know what they were used for. Badi installed the crystal CPU, went out of the host, picked up the reinforced steel sheet, and sealed the host. He patted the dust on his hands and smiled calmly. Don't worry, the plan I gave you clearly explains the process step by step. Let my secretary assist you, and you just need to continue studying, Badi said, and his big hand touched little Luther's head again. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. When I touch all your hair, you will be the strongest. Little Luther frowned his two delicate eyebrows, obviously not knowing that Badi had planned to make him bald in the future. Little Luther was a little worried because Badi's pace was too fast, so fast that even if he had a very high IQ, he couldn't keep up with the pace and could only chase hard behind, almost falling behind. There are already research assistants who want to leave here when they just start studying synthesis and use it for experiments. Obviously, they saw the diabetes specific drug, heart swelling specific drug, and sildenafil, and wanted to take it out to join other pharmaceutical companies. Little Luther's eyes were a little fierce. These damn guys really made him too difficult and troublesome. Didn't they sign the contract to allow them to leave Universe Biotechnology Co. Limited only after half a year? This is based on the law, Badi said with a smile, not caring at all. Little Luther gritted his teeth and said, "What kind of contract is that? The compensation is so little. Who in the whole company would not want to run away after seeing the special medicine ingredients? If it were me, I would run away too. I would be a billionaire if I opened a factory myself." Badi smiled and said, "How did I come to Metropolis? Then kill him." Badi said killing, and it was easy, and he didn't care at all. Little Luther's pupils shrank. Badi obviously didn't want to play any contract rules with you. He never wanted to play rules with others. In addition, he had just recently recovered the International Gang and the Organization 100. Although those two gangs were in chaos because of the second generation seizure of power, it was still easy to send a dozen people to help this researcher who didn't know what was good for him to collect the body. It's still not good. Don't kill them. Badi suddenly said, "I need human experiments in the underground laboratory. If you have any objections, capture them alive for my experiments. It only takes about 3 months, and anything can be solved." Little Luther was silent for a while. He had a clear understanding of Badi's ruthlessness. He was actually very resistant to the behavior of directly killing people to solve the problem. This would never solve the problem. It would only create a lot of missing people and attract the attention of the government and the police. But he was not the one who made the decision. He could only do what Badi wanted. After a while of silence, Little Luther said, "There is news from the suicide slums. A guy named Deathstroke is coming to seek revenge on you." Badi's face was stunned. "Deathstroke, is that guy?" Chapter 81. So that's it. Badi's expression changed from stunned to solemn. When Badi didn't smile, his solemn face would give people a huge pressure. In front of him, it was like seeing a mountain getting closer and closer. You looked up, but you couldn't see the peak. You could only feel that you were buried by the soil at the foot of the mountain. This was almost a kind of spiritual will, which made people feel a huge pressure and dared not smile easily in front of him. When Little Luther saw Badi's serious expression, he felt heavy in his heart. The whole space seemed to be filled with pressure, which made his breathing slow and his heart was lifted. "You go out first. From now on, no one is allowed to enter this computer room without my order. As for the researchers who want to run, just catch them and take them to the underground laboratory on the first floor." Badi said expressionlessly. His tone was calm, without a trace of change. Little Luther didn't know why Badi was so indifferent and cold when he heard the name of the death knell. He even felt a sense of oppression of a stormy battle. He left the computer room and did what Badi asked him to do. Badi didn't become solemn because of the name of Deathstroke. He was familiar with the name of Deathstroke, and it was not surprising that it appeared at this time. Even if the real face of Deathstroke was Colonel Slade, Badi would not be surprised. What really made Badi's face serious and his heart serious was that he was too safe in the overall environment. It was too smooth, and everything was too natural. He certainly knew that power could not rule everything, so he became the god of the suicide slums, bringing them hope, direction, and path forward. Sam Ryan went to the town of Stone to find clues to overthrow General Vic. General Vic prepared all the powerful weapons in the southern suburbs of the metropolis to kill Badi completely. Things seemed ordinary, as light as ripples in a puddle. Badi didn't know their actions. But does all this have nothing to do with Badi? In fact, the center of all this revolves around Badi. It revolves around Badi's alien identity. From the moment Badi learned that Deathstroke was looking for him, he knew it. His alien identity was not exposed. He even developed his brain to a great degree of computing speed and wisdom after being exposed to the sun. He knew it clearly. Deathstroke was Colonel Slade. Similarly, he could not become Deathstroke without the help of a truly genius biological expert, and this person could only be Jenny. Heh. Badi suddenly chuckled on his expressionless face, and his right hand began to support his left hand again, rubbing his thumb in the palm of his left hand. His figure was like a stone monument, his eyes were deep in thought, and under the bright light, he looked like a thinker with the beauty of Greek white marble sculpture, with extraordinary charm. Deathstroke was irrelevant. Of course, this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that Deathstroke suddenly appeared and had the confidence to find himself. Does that mean that General Vic still did not report his alien identity, so the entire American upper class did not know his alien identity? Badi did not think that the entire American upper class really let him live in the metropolis and make trouble. Even if humans have different skin colors and races, they will fight to the death and curse each other. They wish that there was only one race in the world. They are proud of their own race and skin color. They wish that all other races in the world are inferior and inferior. In the past wars, there were too many wars of extermination because of race and skin color. There were too many to count, and the more they counted, the more cruel it was. What's more, Badi is not even a human, but an alien in human appearance, with power close to that of a god. Is it possible for humans to tolerate him? This is impossible. All humans, especially those in the upper class, will study themselves, just like General Vic. General Vic is a typical ambitious person who wants to master and wants Badi's power. But now only Deathstroke came. What does this mean? It represents General Vic's ambition, and he still did not report his alien identity to the American upper class. He still wants to keep himself for himself. This is really great. Badi's thoughtful eyes flashed, and suddenly his right thumb lightly pressed the palm of his left hand. He has been showing up in Gotham and Metropolis in a high-profile manner, and his behavior is simply telling them nakedly that he is here. He just wants to see their attitude. Badi has imagined many situations, but he never thought that he would face the best situation. Whenever he checked into a hotel, he would always go to the highest floor, stand by the French window, and look out at the starry sky. Whenever he looked up at the sun, his pupils looked through the blue sky and clouds, listening to the movements of all directions, thinking about thousands of things. He stood on the Tower of Babel, his head raised high, and the sunlight branded his figure like a god descending. Do you think he just wants to stand on a high place, under the reflection of the sun, like a demon or a god, and say, "I'm the only one in the world. The world is the world"? No, not really. He was watching the nuclear bomb to see if it would fall on his head, the only sword of Damocles created by humans that could kill him now. He did not miss anyone. Cautious and bold. Cautious to the point of being strict. Since arriving in Gotham, he has never slept once in the past 3 months. Even if he closed his eyes, he would look up at the sky through his eyelids, through his vision, and into the distance. As soon as he saw a nuclear bomb, he would instantly calculate the location of the nuclear bomb in his head and avoid the center. In this way, even if he was affected, he would only be seriously injured, and he would still be able to bask in the sun and have enough strength to stand up in the future. This kind of caution was already a reaction to the slightest breeze of the grass and trees. Because he was not really sure how much General Vic knew about his ability. What if General Vic still had a backup of his body cells and research data? At the same time, it was supplied to the entire American upper class, which would cause a huge earthquake. Badi never underestimated human wisdom. There were too many geniuses in this world. What if they knew that he had gradually become invulnerable to weapons and could withstand nuclear bombs in the future? Would they kill him and blow him up with a nuclear bomb? The probability was too small, but it could not be ignored. Because they did not know about Badi's existence, they were afraid of knowing a little bit, and they intended to imagine the fear, and they feared Badi like a tiger and wanted to kill him. Of course, no one dared to do such a thing, not even to suggest it, because Badi had always been in the city. So Badi had been showing up in a high profile, testing them. What made Badi even more strange was that no senior official in the whole city had mobilized these, nor had he received any information. There was no so-called upper class who sent people to contact him. This made Badi suspicious, but also more cautious and bold. He didn't know until the arrival of the death knell. General Vic still regarded himself as a piece of cake and did not let other upper class people in the United States know that he was an alien. That's great. Badi put his hands down and smiled. The later you know your alien identity, the less likely you will be targeted. Even if you delay it for a few years, Badi will be able to prepare everything. As for the future of the Earthlings will naturally be in his hands. The problem now is, get rid of the people who know your identity. Badi narrowed his eyes and tapped the huge host with his hand. I wanted to see you right away, Hera, but it seems that I will have to wait a while. Badi smiled, turned away from the host, and left. The host is located on the 14th floor. When Badi came out and walked to the corridor, it was already dusk outside. The sunset reflected through the glass, shining on the corridor, which was a little warm, dim, and silent. Bang, crash. The quiet sunset was suddenly destroyed, and a green saber dagger pierced through the glass. Badi smiled and stretched out his hands to clamp the green saber dagger. It's so lucky and so happy. A tall figure suddenly appeared and stood on the windowsill. The two-color mask on his face brought an invisible deterrent force like a demon. The sunset reflected dimly on his back, setting off his tall, majestic, and murderous body. His shadow stretched very long, covering Badi's whole body, and a ribbon fluttered in the breeze behind him. This dagger once took away my eyes. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 82, Same. Badi's eyes were deep, and there was a smile on his face. His fingers were like steel, holding a green saber dagger. This dagger had once taken away one of Deathball's eyes, and it has not been restored until now. Don't you want the other eye? Badi smiled. His figure was like a spear nailed here, and his white windbreaker stood tall, elegant and tyrannical, like a cruel Tyrannosaurus Rex smiling. The saber dagger between his fingers faintly exuded murderous intent. Deathball stood high on the windowsill, looking down at Badi. His shadow covered him, and the cold murderous intent of his one eye burst out. When the dim sunlight fell into the distant horizon, the sunset disappeared in an instant. The sunset faded. The world finally fell into darkness. The cold eyes poured out murderous intent. He and the darkness merged into one in an instant. Deathball suddenly jumped up, stepped on the windowsill, and the huge force cracked the wall under the windowsill, and the cracks spread and multiplied. Zing, a cold light burst out coldly, coming at a very fast speed. The flash of the knife in the darkness illuminated the arc of Badi's mouth. Badi's fingers shook, and the saber dagger shot out, piercing the air, and aimed at the eyes of the suddenly rising Deathstroke. The samurai sword swept across, directly sweeping down the flying knife that was too conspicuous and had no hidden traces. The strong force passed through the blade and made Deathstroke's wrist vibrate, and his heart couldn't help but tighten. Such a strong force. The dagger bursting out from between his fingers alone had the power to make him slow down, and this kind of power was frightening. After a moment of shock, anger rose from his heart. This man, aiming at his eyes again. This is a humiliation. Insult. The memory of the death and darkness gradually burying him is still clear and unforgettable. He will never forget that it was Badi who killed him and took away one of his eyes. Anger appeared in the cold eyes of Deathbell. After the samurai sword blocked the dagger in the dark, it flashed cold light and moved horizontally again. The strength of his body, bones, and blood surged, and he cut towards Badi. He had almost 30 tons of strength, which was stronger than Badi at the beginning, and stronger than Badi at the military base. Therefore, he did not hesitate to get familiar with this power. He found Badi and wanted revenge. Without killing Badi, the devil in his heart and the fear of death could not be eliminated. The blade cut through the air. Unsurprisingly, this knife would cut Badi in two. Even with Badi's strength at the beginning, he could not resist it. In the darkness, the knife light seemed to be close to Badi's waist, and two fingers appeared quietly. It was the two fingers that clamped the dagger just now, the index finger and middle finger of the left hand. The samurai sword came up and was clamped. Suddenly, thump, 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 thump. From the far end of the corridor, the lights above the head began to light up, spreading over one by one, just like the quiet corridor scene in a horror movie, with a ghost chasing after them with lights. The lights soon lit up to their position. The lights froze their movements there. Badi's white windbreaker was elegant, like a flower twisting and holding a sword. His eyes looked down at the bell in front of him. The bell stepped forward, his whole body half a head shorter, and all his strength was used to cut horizontally with the samurai sword in his hand. The muscles in his arms grew a little, tightening the tight bulletproof vest. He tried his best to cut horizontally, but was pinched by Badi's fingers. The one-eyed man flashed with disbelief. How is it possible? With nearly 30 tons of strength, he used all his strength to cut horizontally. Even steel would be cut by the sharp and powerful weapon. It was really like cutting melons and cutting water, unstoppable. But now, the blade was clamped by 2 fingers. It was just like the battle in the underground laboratory, so simple and overwhelming. He is strong again. Deathbell felt a chill spread to his head, and fear rose in his heart. There was no luck or desire to fight. It was like Leon facing his sword, but he couldn't push his sword with his hands. Leon knew at the beginning that the gap was infinite, and he couldn't fight. Now Deathbell also knew that there was no way to make up for this gap, because he tried his best, but was blocked by 2 fingers of Badi, and the blade was clamped. He was invincible. Deathbell made a decisive decision and decisively let go of the samurai sword. The whole person retreated, and his footsteps stepped on the corridor, cracking the corridor. The whole person jumped out of the corridor and fled towards the night that had just arrived. The wind blew his body, blowing the 2 ribbons behind him randomly, just like his heart, unstable. Turning in the air, 2 grenades were thrown into the corridor when he jumped out of the window and turned around. With a bang, the grenade exploded, emitting a cloud of white and green smoke. This was a strong biological anesthetic nerve gas. Deathstroke knew that ordinary grenades would be useless against Badi, so he prepared this kind of grenade and made many preparations. But he still didn't expect that Badi would have such overwhelming power. After just 2 moves, he had already decided to escape. There was no chance, no further attack. He was depressed, and his body was covered with sweat. In his mind, Badi's white figure stood like a pillar of heaven, which shocked him. This kind of power, is it something a living thing should have? The white and green biological anesthetic nerve gas quickly spread in the corridor, like the smoke from a fire, surging out of the broken windowsill, and rolling up into the sky. Badi walked out of the thick white and green poisonous fog. With his current strength, as long as he held his breath, these biological anesthetic nerve gases could not hurt him through his skin, and cause no trouble. His eyes seemed to be looking into the sky, where the figure of Deathbell was about to fall. Badi chuckled, his lips curled up, but his eyes were cold and terrifying. He jumped out of the thick white-green smoke, and leaped into the air. The white-green smoke lingered around him, and he descended like a god in white clothes, and stepped on Deathbell in the air. Bang! Deathbell's one-eyed man was even more horrified, and his chest was directly dented by the step. An unparalleled force spread throughout his body, making his body tremble and paralyzed. He was unable to stop Badi. The one-eyed man was even more horrified as Badi descended like a white god and stepped on him. The sound of the wind in the air was even more horrifying, and Deathbell was chilled to the core. The expression under the mask was already almost crazy and twisted with fear, and his eyes were exposed. Like a rocket, he blasted towards the ground. Bang! The neatly laid stone bricks on the ground had a dent, and countless dusts were vibrating out of the gaps. In the dust, Badi's white windbreaker fell off, gently brushing away the dust, and his eyes looked down at the death knell coldly. Death knell was directly stepped on by Badi, and his head and legs were hit by the impact and bounced upwards, forming a U-shape. Soon his head and legs fell down again, his sternum collapsed and shattered, his head was buzzing and shaking, and he lost consciousness in an instant, and his one eye closed in horror. A security guard who heard the loud noise walked out of the biological laboratory building with a gun. They were the men of the international gang and the Organization 100 who were transferred to Badi's gate. They rushed out of the gate with guns, thinking that something had happened. When the dust spread far away, they saw Badi's white figure, staring at the scene with their eyes wide open. "It's none of your business, go back to guard the door," Badi shouted, grabbed Death Knell's ankle, and dragged him into the laboratory building. Chapter 83, Smart Chips. When Death Bell woke up in a daze, he suddenly remembered that he was stepped on by Badi and fell from the 14th floor. The strengthening potion Jenny made for him was really amazing. Even though his sternum was broken, he still felt numbness in his bones when he woke up. Obviously, the healing had never stopped. According to the situation, it would only take a few hours for even such a serious injury as a sternum collapse and breakage to heal without any injury. HMM. He hummed from the tip of his nose, his eyelids suddenly opened, and the pupil of his single eye shrank. He suddenly woke up in the halo of white light, and remembered that he had failed to recover from this serious injury. His eyes showed heavy in seriousness. He was now sitting on a chair, with a posture similar to Jenny's paralysis. His hands and feet were completely numb. He just felt that his body had feelings, but he couldn't move. He was paralyzed. His hands and feet were dislocated, and his body felt numb and couldn't move. The nerve information system could not transmit and control his body. His heart sank. He looked at Badi, who was originally by the window, and was now walking towards him. His white clothes were not stained with dirt even in the fierce battle just now. His figure was still majestic and elegant, looking down on all directions. His steps were like towering mountains, bringing heavy and suffocating pressure to people. "You have recovered well. Jenny is really a genius," Badi said, looking at the wound on Death Bell's chest, nodded, and praised. "It is a genius to understand from the characteristics of his own cells absorbing the sun, regulate human cells, enhance cytoplasmic energy, and allow the overall gene to bear the maximum limit of power, thereby strengthening the human body. Although after doing this, Death Bell only has 5 years left to live." Death Bell stared at Badi with sharp eyes and snorted disdainfully in his nose. "Do you want to confirm her life or death from my mouth?" Badi laughed. "From what you said, I also know that Jenny is now born," Badi said, his face indifferent and expressionless. Deathstroke suddenly burst into laughter and laughed for a while for no apparent reason. "Haha. Do you think everything is under control? When you see Jenny, I'll be curious about your reaction." Hearing what Deathstroke said, Badi frowned slightly. It seems that Jenny did something stupid. "Jenny, this woman is indeed a little stupid. She has survived. Does she hate me? You can become so powerful. Did Jenny also make some potion to make herself powerful?" Deathstroke closed his one eye. He had been tortured most professionally and could control his body's heartbeat and not lie. But he could not control his blood vessels, the hair follicles of his body, and the subconscious reactions deep in his body. Badi's eyes saw through everything. Deathstroke's body was speaking. He nodded. "So that's it. It seems that something happened to this stupid woman Jenny. You can become like this. She can only become more powerful. Is she hating me? Well, that's good." Badi completely saw through what Deathstroke wanted to hide about Jenny. In short, he had already understood from a few sentences. Jenny hated him, made medicine, became powerful, had the potential to become super powerful, but would not live long. The fact that she would not live long was known from the lifespan of Deathstroke's body cells. Deathstroke's face was gloomy, knowing that Badi had guessed that Jenny's life was coming to an end after just a few sentences. Deathstroke sneered. "What a pity. The woman you love, you shot her in the underground laboratory on the -1st floor to keep her alive, and she survived from there. But the woman who stayed behind now hates you, like a monster. Her temperament has changed drastically. She hates you like crazy, and she wants to kill you. She doesn't understand, and doesn't accept the life you gave her." Badi suddenly laughed. "Sorry, you guys are mistaken. I've given her a chance to survive. She's just my slave. If she wants to attack me, she'll only die. How can a slave resist his master, right?" Badi's eyes were gentle and smiling. It seemed that these smart people thought that they loved Jenny very much, but they never knew that Badi would love those who loved him. If he didn't love him anymore, he could just die. If he rebelled against him, didn't obey his will, had opinions, or dared to attack him, he would just crush him to death. Simple, straightforward egoism. Deathstroke sat on the chair, his heart sinking into an ice cave, completely cold. He lost another bargaining chip that could keep him alive under Badi. Badi might not care about Jenny as much as he thought. Then, let's talk about your identity, an alien. An alien whose identity is still unknown to the upper echelons of the United States. Come and trade my life and your identity. Deathstroke calmed down, his eyes sharp. He made preparations before coming to fight Badi. He considered a clean victory. He also considered a fierce battle comparable to a Hollywood blockbuster, and then he lost. But he didn't expect that it would be another crushing battle. Badi stepped on him in 2 moves, and he fell from the 14th floor, seriously injured and unconscious. But before coming, he had also made full preparations for failure, and was prepared to threaten Badi's life. My identity, an alien. Very good. Tell me, I might consider it. Badi smiled, but his eyes were cold and stern. His right hand was supporting his left hand again, and his thumb rubbed in the palm of his hand, and he began to think. The identity of an alien is always unacceptable to human society. Once it is known, it will set off a huge wave. No matter what company or life it is, the upper class of the United States will not let Badi develop gangs here unscrupulously. Now is not the era of heroes. This era is in the Cold War with the Soviet Union, which is even more dangerous. He may be discovered and join either the Soviet Union or the United States, but he will be watched forever and will not have freedom. He is sure and knows it. Because he is too scary. There will be no TV series and movies that let an alien go easily. Even in TV series and movies, there are some conflicts in performance, and finally let the aliens blend into society, but reality will not. Reality is not a TV series. Once the entire US military is mobilized, everything Badi organized here will be wiped out in an instant, and he will be chased and captured indefinitely. Even knowing that he will continue to bask in the sun to become stronger, it is very likely that a nuclear bomb will be used to directly wipe him out. After all, it is really terrifying to become stronger by basking in the sun. You have some quick way to become stronger. Your body is invulnerable, and your eyes will emit high heat rays. Deathstroke's sharp eyes stared at Badi like an eagle. Suddenly he said, "Is it basking in the sun?" He spoke decisively and gritted his teeth. Otherwise, it would be impossible to have more than 10 times the power he had at the military base so quickly. The sun is his source of energy. Even if it is more than 10 times his own strength, facing the slash from 30 tons of power, plus the weapon forged with superalloy steel, even if it is 10 times the power, it is impossible to clamp it with 2 fingers. He has more powerful power. This kind of power growth is totally unreasonable, and Deathstroke instantly thought of the Underground Research Institute, where Badi became almost genetically strong after being exposed to the sun and broke free from the radio frequency needle that paralyzed him. He is also an extremely smart person, and the key point is to think of the reason why Badi became strong. From Nevada to Metropolis, across most of the United States, Badi simply cannot make or research anything to make himself strong. His rise in the formation of power did start in Metropolis. He has no funds, no people, and no equipment. Only the sun helps him become stronger. This kind of power is terrifying. Deathstroke laughed fiercely. So that's it. If the entire upper level military forces in the United States knew that you became so powerful and are such a terrifying alien, I'm afraid they would destroy you even at the cost of the lives of 12 million people in Metropolis. You are an alien who came to invade the earth. Badi rubbed his right thumb with the palm of his left hand, looking down at Deathstroke indifferently. You are very smart. Chapter 84 Deathstroke and Badi. Deathstroke was silent. This compliment of "you are very smart" was almost like irony. If you were really smart, you wouldn't have failed twice in a row at the hands of Badi. This only shows that Badi is better and smarter, more powerful than himself, no matter what. How can you talk about being smart in front of Badi after falling into the current situation? The room is spacious and bright, and the white light is a bit dazzling. There is no furniture. It is white here. The walls are white, the floor is white, and even the landline phone hanging on the wall is still white. The space is silent, with only the air flowing quietly outside the window. The two were silent, one sitting paralyzed, and the other standing like a javelin. In the past, the positions and situations of the two were exchanged, but now, it is now. The atmosphere became inexplicably quiet. After a moment of silence, Deathstroke said, "Not as good as you." After saying that, he glanced at Badi, as if admitting some facts, struggling unwillingly in his heart. The two failures have proved that he is indeed inferior to him. There are some people you really can't compare to, far from being able to do it. Badi raised his eyebrows slightly, thinking of the psychology of the bell. A genius in the army, for the first time, met a person who was more powerful than himself, and he was far from being able to catch up. He was discouraged and lamented that he was not as good as others. Similarly, this is also a psychological journey to face oneself. Not as good as is not as good as. Of course, defeating the bell is meaningless to Badi, and he never cared about the bell at all. "How many people know my alien identity?" Badi said. The slightly discouraged look of the bell cheered up, closed his one eye, and the sharp edge shone coldly on Badi. Failure is a fact for him, and not as good as Badi is also a fact. He will not deny it, nor will he be stubborn and angry and raw. He will only learn from the lessons of failure with perseverance and calmness. One day, he will succeed. And the day of success is a day when Badi dies. As long as he doesn't die, he still hasn't lost. But now, he needs to escape from here first, otherwise everything will be over. My life. Deathbell's voice was cold. He needed to ensure his own survival. "You won't die." Badi made him a promise. Deathbell was a very good man. Among the people he knew, no one could compare to him. He would definitely not die. But, he could only live according to his own ideas. Deathbell stared at Badi's indifferent face. At this moment, Badi's tall and strong body seemed to be looking down at him. "I want to leave here, and at the same time, I will help you keep your identity secret." He stared at Badi's eyes and said coldly, "Immortality does not mean anything. Even Deathbell himself has many ways to treat enemies worse than death." "Okay, keeping it secret for 10 years is enough." Badi agreed directly without any hesitation. Deathbell's eyes narrowed and stared at Badi's face. His eyes seemed to turn into sharp thorns and pierce him. Badi said it too quickly and too easily. It was unbelievable. Deathbell did not believe him for a second, but he also had a way to escape, so he was not worried. "General Vic has set up a trap for you in the southern suburbs of the metropolis. Until now, he has not reported your alien identity to the US military. As long as you deal with the people there, your alien identity will be kept secret enough." Deathbell said. "So it seems that when I destroyed the military base, I actually destroyed all the information. General Vic only has the role of witness of his general identity." Badi rubbed his palms and said thoughtfully. His eyes never closed the perspective vision for a moment, and he saw the reaction of Deathbell's body to his words. Deathbell said, "Yes, he has been forced to the brink of despair. He can only rely on you, or your corpse, to consolidate his position and power." Badi nodded thoughtfully. He could imagine the pressure General Vic was facing. Tens of thousands of soldiers were killed and wounded in the military base under his jurisdiction. He could handle such a thing and not step down, which proved that his power was strong enough. The rest can only wait for retirement and abdication. "These are not enough for you to let me go," Deathbell suddenly said. If he could get away like this, it would be too much of a compliment to little Badi and his own IQ. Badi raised his eyebrows, and suddenly he seemed to turn into a wild beast. His aura emanated from his upright body, and his figure seemed to turn into a curtain of the sky in this space, covering the entire space. His eyes were as deep as black holes, and he smiled with a fake smile. "You have other plans?" "Well, it's normal." The air seemed to stagnate slightly, because of Badi's aura, and it became afraid. Deathbell paused for a moment, and in an instant he seemed to feel Badi falling down like the sky. He suppressed his heart that suddenly beat rapidly, and said in a deep voice, "When you fell to the earth, a reporter took a picture of your spaceship and your appearance. The film is in my hand." Badi stood there, as if looking down at Deathbell from the sky. His eyes were ruthless and indifferent, bringing a heavy pressure to Deathbell's heart. "Speak." Badi's voice was cold. Deathstroke took a deep breath and said, "This film will be received by someone at 9 p.m. He will definitely hand it over to the US military, unlike General Vic." Badi's face changed, his eyes narrowed, and he looked at Deathstroke with a fierce look, which made Deathstroke a little frightened. In an instant, Badi turned his head, his eyes penetrated the walls, steel bars, and the laboratory building, and saw the time from the clock hanging on one of the stairs. 1949. Is that enough time? Badi turned his eyes back to Deathstroke's body, and his tone was a bit fast and cold. This tone made Deathstroke feel a lot more relaxed. This proved that he could indeed threaten him. It also proved that he had the greatest chance of escaping from here. I came to the laboratory building at 6 o'clock, and it turned out that I had been unconscious for 1 hour and 49 minutes. The remaining time is enough. Let me leave and intercept this film, or let the US military know your identity completely. Deathstroke said coldly. The empty room was silent, and you could hear a pin drop. Suddenly, Badi didn't show any urgency. His face was cold, like a god in the white clouds in the sky, looking down at him, looking at him as an ant. Deathstroke suddenly felt uneasy. Badi's expression changed too quickly. When he was in a hurry, he showed urgency and coldness, but now, it was too cold. Just now, he was still eager to cover up his alien identity, but now he looked at him like an ant. Doesn't he care about his alien identity being exposed, and he wants to kill him? How could he be so stupid? Deathstroke's heart sank. It turns out that being able to intercept this film in 1 hour and 11 minutes is not a phone call, but an action. That means the person you gave the film to is in Metropolis. Badi sneered. Deathstroke's face suddenly changed. Badi was right. Deathstroke, do you know what the gap is between you and me? That is, you are a human, and I am already a god. Chapter 85 Target. Deathstroke's heart sank, but his expression was cold and sneered. Will God be afraid of nuclear bombs? Will he be afraid of being discovered as an alien by the US military? Badi laughed. Afraid? You can think so. Badi didn't explain too much what he was going to do, and the enemies he would face in the future were so terrifying that they could blow up the earth at will, and some could even destroy the Milky Way. People, gods, ghosts, and demons were so powerful that they were enough to scare the people on Earth and make them disappear into ashes. At this moment, no matter how careful you are, it is not too much. The current caution is just to lurk, so that the future self will be stronger and stronger, enough to face any opponent. Since he knows that he is an alien, he has the opportunity to hide. Even if he hides for a few years, it is enough for Badi to develop a magnificent trend and make himself strong enough to destroy the Intercontinental. Before, he jumped openly in Gotham and Metropolis just to lure them out and test their tolerance for him, to see if they would destroy him because of his strength, even if it meant using nuclear bombs to wipe out the city's millions of people. Obviously, this is too careful, but for Badi, any caution is not too much. Because he came from a highly technological civilization, a highly strict rule, Krypton, so he couldn't be too careful. Now he found that they didn't pay any attention to him. General Vic hid himself. If he had such an opportunity to develop himself, it would be foolish not to seize it. I have planned a path for your future. You may accompany me to conquer the universe in the future. Badi said, with a majestic figure, stepping proudly on the mountain peak, stepping into the sky, the starry sky and the universe. Time is running out. Let me go. I will intercept the film and keep your alien identity secret. Otherwise, once the top of the US military knows your identity, you will not have a moment of peace. How can you talk about conquering the universe? Deathstroke was disdainful and thought he was shameless. Even if he had such power, he would not have the opportunity to talk about conquering the universe, because he could only hide in the human world now. Badi was not displeased, but laughed instead. You know nothing about my ability, but I can guess from your few words who has the film. Badi's right thumb never stopped rubbing the palm of his left hand, which would increase his attention. It was his subconscious way of thinking with his head. Deathbell closed his eyes and did not communicate with Badi. He knew that Badi was very smart and was afraid that Badi would guess the location of the film with just a few words. But he didn't know that he had said enough. This film will be received by someone at 21 o'clock. Unlike General Wick, he will definitely hand it over directly to the US military. Badi's eyes were like black holes, with extraordinary wisdom in the depth. His wise eyes stared at Deathbell and said what Deathbell had said. Deathbell still closed his eyes and didn't take it seriously. This was indeed what he said before he came to kill Badi. He wanted to use this to threaten Badi, but Badi seemed to still be thinking. He didn't agree, so he closed his eyes and waited. But he felt his body was cold and paralyzed in the chair, as if he was not wearing any clothes. Badi stared at Death Bell, his eyes never stopped seeing through, and every blood vessel and brain nerve current was clearly visible in his eyes. Nothing could be hidden from his eyes. In Badi's eyes, Death Bell was now a transparent human figure, and the human figure composed of every vein and nerve inside was seen clearly by him. He is different from General Vic. Different from General Vic. Do you mean that his personality is different from General Vic? Why did he hand it over to the top of the US military? He is a person who loves America, so you are sure that he will hand it over to the US military? Badi spoke, and his eyes saw that the nerve current of Death Bell flowed a little faster. Although his heart was still controlling his heartbeat steadily, Badi had already seen the most real reaction with perspective. Death Bell could control his heartbeat, but he could never control the nerve reaction in his mind. It is too normal to hear familiar words and make corresponding subconscious reactions, which is something that no one can control. It is impossible for anyone to lie in front of Badi. Patriot. He is different from General Vic in character, but the one who can make you hand over the film to him and attract the attention of the US military must be of the same identity as General Vic. At least the difference is not too big. When Badi said this, he found that the nerve current of Death Bell, who had his eyes closed, flowed faster. Badi's mouth curled up into a smile, which was enough to prove that his speculation was correct. The person who received the film is also a general, patriotic, and in Metropolis. Death Bell did not move on the surface. Even his heartbeat and pulse were still suppressed as usual. He did not dare to think about Badi's words in his brain, fearing that his body would reflex. But in Badi's eyes, the nerve current was already flowing, confirming this fact. Badi was careful and saw the details, and his brain's intelligent calculations were more powerful than today's computers. In an instant, he figured out the flaws revealed by Death Bell's words, and figured out the person who would receive the film. By looking through the nerve reactions in Death Bell's body, he was 100% sure. He turned away from Death Bell in front of him, walked to the landline phone hanging on the wall, and dialed a number directly. In the background of the receiver, there was a faint sound of drums, rock, female shrill voices and the sound of footsteps on the ground. It was obvious that the other party was having a party and was having a good time. It was conceivable that the person who answered the phone was hiding in a corner to listen to the call so as not to be too noisy and cause Badi's displeasure. Boss, I'm promoting Sildenafil to the upper class. They said they are willing to try it. The specific results will depend on the results before deciding on cooperation. I'm not using public funds to eat, drink and have fun at a party. The nervous voice was from Noi, the original owner of the biological company that Badi bought. Noi was not a person who managed a company and conducted research, but he had a certain understanding of diplomacy, the wealthy people in the upper class, the nobles, and even the entire metropolis. Badi knew people well, so he hired him as a diplomat of the Universal Biotechnology Company and allocated some money to him to develop sildenafil, which was specifically for the upper class, so that his company could enter the upper class of the metropolis. When it comes to knowing people in the metropolis, this Noi knows everything. Before Badi spoke, Noi was about to show his achievements. Boss, I got the news. A group of guys in the family know that you came from the suicide slum, and they want you to have a hard time. They said they want you to kowtow and confess your guilt and apologize to them. If you don't come, the whole family will attack the company and make us beggars who are trampled and spat on by everyone in the metropolis, and finally break our legs and throw us into the Atlantic Ocean. Noi's fat belly was startled. He was quite frightened when he thought that his boss had implicated his 200-pound body. He spent a lot of time in the upper echelons of the metropolis. Although it has ended now, he knows a lot of news. The family is even clearer, because more than 10 years ago, he was also a member, but later he lost all his family property and fell down and was expelled from the family. Badi was indifferent and didn't take it to heart at all. Compared with the US military, these capitalists and commercial sniping seemed insignificant. Noi, don't worry, they can't touch us. I have recently developed a new drug and I'm interested in contacting people in the military. Who are the military people in Metropolis now? They will be the backing of the company. Badi said indifferently and casually made a flawless lie. Noi was overjoyed. It turned out that the boss had the support of the military. No wonder he recklessly raised the suicide slums. I know the people of the Drayton family, the Marion family, and the Grode family. Boss, I'm familiar with some of the second generations they often hang out with. Noi said attentively. Yeah. Badi responded and asked again, are these all the military families in Metropolis? Noi said again, that's not the case. There is also the Ryan family. The Ryan family has strict family rules and they don't even bother to come out and play with us second generations. In recent years, a lieutenant general has emerged in the family and is qualified to be promoted to the position of general. I can't contact this kind of person. Badi raised his eyebrows. The Ryan family. He knew that there was a guy who would be famous in the future and had a lot of opinions about Superman. What's the name of the lieutenant general of the Ryan family? Badi asked. Sam Ryan. Noise said, I heard that this guy's not easy to deal with, boss. He is so young, but acts like an old stubborn. It's hard to get along with him. Hearing the name of Sam Ryan, Deathstroke's heart sank into an ice cave, and his whole body felt heavy. His closed eyelids twitched unconsciously. Oh, then he must be very patriotic. Badi asked with a smile and a little joking. Noise seemed to roll his eyes and said, among so many military families in the metropolis, only his family with many rules is the most loyal to the United States. Some people call their family the loyal dog of the United States. Badi smiled and said, that's really not nice. Keep expanding the company's business. Come to me for reimbursement for how much you spend. Noi was overjoyed and bowed his head and said that boss was wise and powerful. He hung up the phone. Badi turned around and retracted his perspective. In his eyes, Deathstroke looked like a human being again. It turned out to be Sam Lane. He is indeed the one who would hand over my alien identity to the US military. Badi smiled faintly. Some things, if you unravel them and get to the end, you will find that they are actually very simple. But if you are not smart enough, not careful enough, and not brave enough, you will never be able to do it. At least Deathstroke thought that it was absolutely impossible for him to guess the target by just speaking and making a phone call. He opened his eyes and looked deeply at Badi. He is indeed like a god. I lost. Deathstroke closed his one eye again, very tightly, so tightly that it was a little sour, and he was silent in his heart. A decadent breath came out of his mouth, and the whole person seemed to be slack and limp on the chair, without a trace of vitality. He lost. He lost too thoroughly. There was no chip, no chance, no possibility for Badi to let him go. Don't worry, you won't die, nor will I study you. You will still be free, and even, you will still oppose me in the future. Badi walked behind him, and knocked the doubtful death bell unconscious with a knife. The night was dark, and the starry sky was clear, bright and beautiful. A villa with blue and white exterior walls, a solemn and spacious villa. A half-yellow document bag was exposed in the mailbox. Sam Ryan entered from the door, and took the document bag from the mailbox, with a bit of doubt on his face. Who would specially send a document bag at night? He pondered for a while, opened the door of the villa, and greeted his daughter. He temporarily put the bag on the shoe cabinet, picked up his daughter, put his face close to her little face, and rubbed it. The daughter giggled. Chapter 86 Discovery. The darker the night, the more it can bring out the brilliance and beauty of the stars. The sky is like a jewel shining on the dark curtain. The dark blue and white villa has a classical charm, but the furniture is placed in a standard manner, which makes it look orderly and decent, but it is a bit solemn, making people feel that the villa is a bit unsmiling. Outsiders dare not be casual about the owner of the villa and the people living in the villa. There are only little Louis and Lieutenant General Sam Lane in the villa. Sam Lane played with his daughter for a while with a doll. The daughter giggled and was lifted up high by him and caught. After a while, he carried his daughter to spin. It was warm and happy. He rarely had time to spend time with his daughter, so he was very happy. But the little girl was too young to play for more than half an hour. In addition, during the day, although he was not at home, the little girl was very active and wild, crawling and jumping everywhere. At night, she was tired and finally hung on Sam Lane's chest and fell asleep with Sam Lane patting her back gently. Sam Lane smiled knowingly and put her on the bed gently. His daughter slept in an unmannerly manner with her mouth pursed, as if she was eating in her dream, which made Sam Lane laugh. He gently kissed his daughter's forehead, but his daughter turned over again with her mouth pouting. It was obvious that her father's stubble made her feel itchy and uncomfortable. He gently covered her with the quilt, smiled and shook his head, but in his heart he was sighing at his daughter's cuteness, cuteness, cuteness. He held her in his palms and held her in his mouth, afraid that her cuteness would melt. He pressed the door handle lightly, closed it tightly, and then slowly let it go. The sound of the door closing was so slight that it did not wake up his daughter. Sam Ryan seemed to be relieved. He lifted his heels and walked away from the door. The farther he walked, the more steady his steps became. He took the yellow paper document bag from the shoe cabinet and flipped it over. He did not see any signature and did not know the source. He was a little confused. Of course, he would not think that someone could easily put boring or dangerous things into his mailbox. This villa area was a military area with strict management. Dangerous things had long been excluded. Holding the paper document bag, he went straight to the study on the 3rd floor. When he passed his daughter's room, he subconsciously slowed down his pace. Entering the study, the soft warm light was on. He sat on the chair, put the paper document bag of unknown origin aside, and picked up the 2 inspection documents on the desk to read. It was about the town of Stone, the meteorite crater in the giant sequoia forest, and the scraped giant sequoia forest. His face gradually showed a serious expression, which matched his tough and upright square face, making him look unusually solemn and sharp. There is indeed weak radioactive radiation from outer space in the soil, which is not much different from what has been detected in meteorites in the past. But there are no element of rocky meteorites. Even after 2 years, there shouldn't be no trace of it. Unless, what fell was not a meteorite, but something else. Sam Ryan's face was serious, and there was rigor in his eyes. He put down the test data, and his heart was heavy with gloom. General Vic, as expected, concealed something and got something. Is it alien biotechnology? Sam Ryan's eyes flashed with thought. With these things, he couldn't bring down General Vic. He saw the yellow paper document bag on the table. He subconsciously took it in his hand. The yellow paper document bag felt slightly smooth, like touching the surface of a book. There seemed to be a small round object inside, and it protruded like a few small pieces of paper. What could it be? Sam Ryan untied the rope of the paper bag, opened the bag, stretched it, and looked inside. What he saw made his eyes shrink suddenly, his breathing contract, and his heart tighten. There was a film and several photos inside. Due to the angle, he only saw that the photos were very dark, but the film was clearly visible. Judging from the specifications of the film, it looked very much like the film of the Pentax K1000 camera in Mike's hand when he went to Stone Town 2 days ago. Doubts and excitement flashed through his mind, as if he could witness the fall of General Vic and become the youngest admiral. Quickly, he turned the bag down and poured out the contents. The film rolled out, and then several photos slid out of the bag and lay on the table. Sam Ryan intercepted the rolling film with his hand, picked it up, and checked it up and down. It was indeed a film of the specifications of the Pentax K1000 camera. His breathing became heavy. Someone gave him a big gift. There will be evidence to bring down General Vic. His eyes tightened with a bit of sharpness and turned to look at the photos on the table. Putting the film aside, he picked up the photos with both hands and looked at them. The environment in the photo was dark, but it did not affect the identification. It was the location of the giant sequoia forest and the corner of the meteorite that he had visited before. Badi was hanging on the spaceship, and the angle of the photo was even close to his face, giving him a true portrayal, with the scar and appearance clearly photographed. The material of the spaceship did not look like that of the Earth, and the firelight reflected a crash scene. Sam Ryan's breathing became rapid, his pupils opened in shock, and the photos in his hand flashed faster and faster in his hand. This is... His heart suddenly beat faster, and he looked at the photos in his hand in disbelief. A living alien. Bamulodi. Sam Ryan's spine seemed to have a chill rising to his head. causing lumps to appear on his body. He knew Badi. Knowing what Badi did in the suicide slums, he created Bamulodi. In the past, he thought that Badi was just a biological warrior, using ordinary people to create a gang, to fight back against General Vic. The few gang forces were not in his eyes at all. But now, thinking carefully and boldly, Bamulodi is an alien. He created himself as a god and created forces, which always gave Sam Ryan a frightening sense of aggression. This is not a battle among humans, but may even be a war between the Earth and alien creatures. He may be an advanced scout of alien creatures, and there may even be a civilization behind him, waiting to invade the Earth. He does not believe that humans and aliens can coexist peacefully. This is just like the ecosystem of nature, and the entire universe is also an ecosystem. It is normal for the strong to prey on the weak. The more Sam Ryan thought about it, the more frightened he felt. Bang. Sam Ryan angrily slapped the table with his palm, shaking the table, and the documents on the table shook a few times, and the sound echoed in the study. Anger suddenly rose on his face, and his eyes were filled with rage. Vic. He roared angrily at General Vic. General Vic was too bold and too selfish. Such a serious matter, aliens of unknown origin, actually had to hide it from the country. It was simply courting death. Sam Ryan's angry face was full of haze. He could now overthrow General Vic 100%, but there was no excitement in his heart, only anger and tight worry. Quickly, he stuffed the film and photos into the file bag and walked out of the study. The file bag must be handed over to the top of the US military immediately, and Bamulodi must be arrested immediately. This is really too serious. The quiet villa and Sam Ryan's tense mood seemed to be in contrast, just like the time flowing quietly in a ghost movie. It was extremely quiet in the villa. There was only his footsteps. At this moment, in his own home, he actually felt a tight suffocation in his heart. He stepped out of the study and felt this atmosphere. It was like a horror movie, quiet without background sounds. It seemed like something was in the villa, terrifying and frightening. He looked around in the corridor. The villa was still in a formal and serious style, but it gave him a feeling of depression, as if an unknown existence was staring at him, making him feel depressed and unable to breathe. With a gloomy face, he came down from the 3rd floor and passed by his daughter's room. He found that the door of his daughter's room was open, and there was a faint white figure in the darkness. Chapter 87 Arrange the future for you. Badi gently scratched the little girl's face with his fingers. Her skin was tender, soft, and comfortable. The girl didn't sleep well. Her legs kicked the quilt off. Her mouth was a little open. Saliva was flowing from the corners of her mouth, and her whole body was twisted into a big character. Is her name Lois Lane? Badi asked softly. His voice spread in the silent space and did not wake the little girl. If it was really Lois Lane, then Badi would consider her future, design various futures for her, and control it in his own hands. Lois Lane, a woman with this name, is Superman's girlfriend, wife, and even gave birth to a son in most stories. Superman's family, the L family, is his enemy, the wife of his enemy, and he will not let them go, no matter what time it is. This kind of not letting go is not death, but in Badi's hands, it will definitely make their original future change. Now Superman has not landed on the Earth yet, and it is impossible to know what preparations Jor-El has made. Will he land in Kansas as originally, or will his existence take a strange turn, like a butterfly effect, making Superman hide? If Superman is not found, then maybe he can control Lois Lane, force them to meet or make them meet by fate. At that time, he wants the people of the L family to live a life worse than death. After thinking about many possible futures in his mind, Badi decided in an instant that Lois Lane needed to be under his control. A figure just came to the door. The light in the corridor made Sam Lane's body very tall. He blocked the light outside the corridor, and the human figure was reflected on the ground. Bamulodi. Sam Lane roared. His face was very ugly. After knowing the true identity of this alien, he understood what he wanted to do. He was too stupid. He didn't understand his identity until this moment. There was no way to check and balance him. At the same time, he hated General Vic deeply. He dragged the entire country and even mankind into the abyss with his own desires, which made him angry. The white figure stood tall and upright beside his daughter, which made people tremble with fear. Badi turned around, his eyes like a black hole, staring at Sam Lane's body, making him feel as if his paws were pricked by needles. His hair stood up. Badi's side seemed to have supreme power, piercing his paws, and he was even more frightened. Badi was late, or rather, he was not late. It was just that from the beginning, Deathstroke had no intention of letting Badi go, but wanted to kill Badi. If he listened to what Deathstroke said, let him go, and intercepted the film, then Deathstroke would just leave, regardless of the film, and escape with his life. Even if Badi had a way to restrict him and let him get the film back, he would get it back under the restriction, but the photos had been seen, and it would be useless to just give the film back to Badi, because Sam Lane still knew everything. But Badi didn't know that Deathstroke also kept his promise, and at that time he had a glimmer of hope. No matter what, whether Badi lets him find the film, or restricts him from finding the film, whether he can leave Badi's hands or not, the result will be that Sam Lane sees the photo. Badi will also become a thorn in the flesh and a thorn in the eyes of the US military, and will be captured as a stray dog. Deathstroke wants to kill Badi completely, whether in terms of force or strategy, with the help of the entire US military top brass. Whether Deathstroke himself lives or dies, the US military top brass in the future will target Badi. But in the end, he lost miserably. With just a few words, Badi deduced that Sam Lane was his. This kind of calculation ability and wisdom made him sad and chilled. He really had a godlike insight into the world. He really lost. If he had not died once and still wanted to live, it would have caused Badi a little trouble. But now it is impossible. In the future, Deathstroke will live according to Badi's ideas without knowing it. Sam Lane suppressed his breath and his body was a little stiff. Badi gave people a terrifying feeling, like facing a towering mountain, with a giant looking down. The difference in the nature of this creature is like an ordinary person facing a ferocious Tyrannosaurus Rex, which makes people unconsciously breathe tight and their hearts tremble and beat fast. He suppressed his heartbeat, looked at his daughter, and said in a deep voice, "What are you doing here?" He did not pretend not to know Badi, because it was stupid. Badi looked at Sam Ryan's left hand, which was holding a file bag. His fingers pressed so tightly that the file bag was wrinkled. Sam Ryan saw Badi's eyes focusing on the file bag and narrowed his eyes slightly. "You came to find this? What's inside?" Sam Ryan said. His heart beat faster, his face was solemn and tense, and his eyes looked at the file bag in his hand repeatedly with doubt and suspicion. The acting of the Oscar winner was as if he had never seen what was inside. Film and photos are meaningless. As long as Sam Ryan has seen and known, then there is no meaning. As long as Sam Ryan can survive from Badi, then Badi will definitely be sniped by the US military, because he has a lot of power in the US military, knows a lot of things, and can also let them deal with Badi. Badi laughed dumbly. When he came nearby, and used perspective and farsightedness, he had already seen Sam Ryan saw the photos in the study on the 3rd floor. Now there is no point in getting the film and photos. It's okay, I know everything, and have arranged the future for you. Badi smiled lightly, and walked towards Sam Ryan calmly. Badi, who came in the shadows, was like a demon swallowing out of the abyss. Every step seemed to step on Sam Ryan's heartbeat, making him extremely uncomfortable. Sam Ryan's face was very ugly. He blamed himself for knowing too late, blamed himself for being too stupid, and blamed General Vic for being ambitious. The things he concealed would bring disaster to the entire United States. I can give you this document, and I can also let you deal with it. My daughter is still very young and there is no danger. Please let her go. Sam Ryan lowered his head a little. As a tough general, he bowed to Badi for his daughter. He knew that Badi's power would burst out. As an ordinary person, he had no way to dodge or block it. The bullets could not penetrate his skin, and there was no way to fight. He just asked him to let his daughter go. "I have also arranged a future for your daughter," Badi said calmly, approaching Sam Ryan. Sam Ryan's face changed drastically, staring at Badi angrily, and suddenly stepped back to take action, wanting to take out the pistol from his waist. At the moment Sam Ryan stepped back, a big hand came out of the door like a dragon coming out of a cave, followed his body, and pinched his neck, and easily lifted him up. He didn't struggle at all, and Bati's thumb pressed on his neck nerves. His head tilted, and his angry face did not disappear, and he was pinched unconscious by Badi. Chapter 88 Hera. Cosmic Biotechnology Co. Limited. The 14th floor of the laboratory building. The broken windows in the corridor, the nerve gas thrown by Deathstroke, have been cleaned up. Bright lights tilted down from the ceiling, illuminating the entire corridor. It is forbidden to enter here casually. In the main computer room, there are two simple movable operating tables. Sam Ryan and Deathstroke are laying. Sam Ryan woke up in a daze, and there was a white halo in front of him, which was dazzling and tearful, and his eyes were sore. He squinted his eyes, and took a while to accept the white environment in front of him, before he woke up. He is not dead yet? He was surprised in his heart. Why didn't Badi kill him? Slade Wilson. He turned his head and suddenly saw a familiar person lying on the operating table next to him. He exclaimed, and then he realized that he couldn't make any sound, and he couldn't hear any sound. He only felt that the environment was slightly cool, as if the cool air of the air conditioner was icy in his pores, and he could see things with his eyes. His entire body was dislocated, sore and limp, unable to muster a single bit of strength. He was horrified, unable to speak, unable to hear, unable to move. Although he had a hardened heart from years of military training, he was still a little terrified. This was too much like the evil biological experiments, and he wondered what Badi would do to him. Badi came over, and behind him, the incandescent light above his head cast his tall shadow, covering Sam Ryan's face, which frightened him, because it all looked too much like an experiment, especially when Badi was talking. He could only see but not hear, which was too scary. He wondered what kind of monster he would be made of. His heart sank to the bottom. Awake, not bad. Badi was above Sam Ryan's head, looking down at him like a giant. Time was running out, and once the American military discovered that a lieutenant general had disappeared, trouble would arise again. He snapped his fingers, a smile appeared on his face, and his white windbreaker shone, as if bathed in snow-white light. Hera, wake up, Badi said with a smile to the huge mainframe. The mainframe suddenly hummed, a green light came on, and then the internal parts started to move continuously. Badi's ears were particularly clear. He saw through the operation of each part through his penetrating vision, and planned to update the next mainframe again, making it stronger and more perfect. Lights shone from all four corners of the room. The room was spacious, vast, and white. There was nothing else, only Badi and the two people lying on the operating table. The light projected a gorgeous lady, with the elegance and dignity of a queen, a head of beautiful curly hair cascading from the crown, arms as white as lilies, and gorgeous clothes, embellished with dazzling jewels, which further highlighted her beauty and dignity. Although Hera was beautiful, she looked wooden and lifeless. She opened her red lips slightly. The first stage of artificial intelligence awakens. Please enter the password. Badi recalled the password he created in the Underground Research Institute. Zod has a mole on his butt, and the mole is like Zod's butt. This is the secret code newly created by Badi. Every time you open it, you need a password. The password created by Badi will include the previous passwords. In the future, there may be more times to open it, and perhaps a password may include the previous passwords, which is an astronomical number. The password is correct, and the intelligence system will be activated. The projected Hera suddenly had a flexible feeling, with an elegant smile on her lips, and bowed slightly to Badi. Nice to meet you, my master, Hera said elegantly. Badi nodded, seeing Hera's rare good mood. The corner of his mouth raised a smile, and then said, the second stage of artificial intelligence is activated. Hera smiled elegantly, and said in a stylized way, please enter the password, and recite the decimal point of pi backwards to 1 million digits. Entering the password, reciting the decimal point of pi backwards officially begins. 1314, completed. Badi did not really recite the decimal point of pi backwards to 1 million digits. This was just talk. If someone really intends to activate Hera's intelligent program, really recite it, that would be stupid. Hera transformed herself, her gorgeous clothes disappeared, and she put on a black slim evening dress with folded lace, which set off her graceful, plump, sexy and fair figure. Her dress fluttered, her figure was perfect, Her body was as delicate and shiny as white jade, and her red lips were very sexy when she smiled. Enchanting, sexy and elegant, and she had the majesty of a mother of the world, which was very moving. She opened up a deeper level of intelligence, and she had an emotional system. Her virtual body seemed to be attached to Badi, but she frowned, because she was a vague projection, and her elegant face looked very dissatisfied. Master, I need a body, to enjoy the bed with you. Hera's eyes were bright and piercing. If she had a body, no one could tell that she was an artificial intelligence. She wanted to stick to the master's skin, and listen to the master's heartbeat as before, and she would feel peaceful, comfortable, and existential. On Krypton, Hera was by his side every night, accompanying him through countless conspiracies and calculations. If there is anyone who is trustworthy, then it is only his own artificial intelligence Hera, whom he trusts. This may be very funny, trusting an artificial intelligence, but for the changeable biological mind, the artificial intelligence that can be controlled by him is more worthy of Badi's trust. Of course I want you to accompany me. Badi's heart was filled with warmth, and he smiled faintly. Hera was by his side again, making him relax and comfortable. Hera's elegant smile deepened, and her beautiful eyes stared at Badi, staring intently. The virtual figure stuck to Badi, reluctant to leave. Let's do business first, Badi said. Hera and Badi have been together for a long time, and their minds have been connected. She knows everything about Badi, and immediately understands what Badi wants to do. Immediately, 3 information detection needles connected to the host were controlled by Hera, and swam out from the air like a snake raising its head, and came to Sam Ryan's head. Sam Ryan stared with his eyes, horrified and terrified, staring at these needles, and resentful in his heart. This alien must do something to him. Badi took an information detection needle with his fingers. The needle was very small, like a needle used for acupuncture. Originally, it was supposed to be used on a disobedient researcher in his company for the first time. He did not expect that it would be used on a celebrity for the first time. He turned on the perspective and directly saw Sam Lane's brain, and saw every cerebral groove, nerve fiber, and cerebral cortex. Very good, keep active. Badi stared at him, and the information detection needle in his hand rotated slightly, and inserted into Sam Lane's scalp and skull. Sam Lane felt with a chill that his skull seemed to be drilled slightly by an electric drill, penetrating the skull, and the cold long needle seemed to be inserted into the brain, making the brain cool. Badi inserted the 3 information detection needles into Sam Lane's memory area, the brain layer area triggered by the subconscious, and the structure representing the highest level of neural regulation of action. Sam Lane was inserted like a Teletubbies. Badi nodded, very satisfied with his masterpiece. The perspective vision made him the most accurate doctor in the world, without any deviation. Hera, extract his memories. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 89 by a chip. Sam Ryan suddenly recalled his life. Unexpected images appeared in his mind. Some subtle things that he had completely forgotten. Things that he had no memory of at all. For example, when he was very young, he had the memory of bedwetting, the memory of shanshan crawling, elementary school, middle school, and military school, some trivial things, the feeling of eating, the feeling of getting enough sleep, the feeling of shooting for the first time, the vibration of the pistol in his hand, the shocking sound of the eardrum, the fearful face of the dead when he killed people, the trembling in his heart, the fear, all of which came out from nowhere in his brain. He seemed to review his life of more than 30 years. Pictures came out one after another, clear and real. His eyes widened, flashing the past, and tears flowed naturally. The space was very quiet, with only the slight humming sound of the host, and only Badi could hear it with his sharp ears and eyes. Most people were completely unaware. The extraction was very successful. In just 1 minute and 30 seconds, Sam Ryan's life had been extracted. This is horrifying. He can extract the memory in the brain at will, and let humans know that he will destroy him at all costs. Because this can do too much. If he can extract, he can also modify. In his hands, people are no longer human, and they will even doubt their self-awareness and fear that they do not exist. Collate and extract the information about the characters of the US military, involving high technology, alien technology, and Sam Ryan's recent actions. Badi ordered. Okay, Master. Hera is very intelligent and knows what Badi wants to see. She projects a graceful figure, swaying and flickering as she stands, and starts to sort it out. The speed is very slow, and it takes 23 seconds. If it were on Krypton, this sorting would not take 0.1 seconds at all. Her computing power exceeds that of contemporary Earth, but it is still slow, very slow. The projected picture is on the white wall, like watching a movie, and all the powerful figures in the US military in Sam Ryan's memory can be seen. His status was high enough to know all the military figures in the United States. They were staunch patriots, held high positions, had a promising future, and knew many hidden secrets. There were many strange things. From the beginning, he was not too surprised by Badi's power, which showed that he had also seen secrets of superhuman power. There were even some secret special people that Badi never knew. In addition to the various special people that can be seen in comics, there are many other special people that exist in the real world that are not drawn in comics. After all, comics are only a part of the real world, and it is difficult to generalize. Badi thought silently in his heart. Fortunately, he never really thought of this comic world, otherwise he would have died long ago. The picture on the wall turned to Area 51, which was an experiment several years ago. Badi's face suddenly changed. He always looked calm in the face of danger, and it was hard to imagine that he would be shocked. What is that? The screen showed an operation being performed, with mechanical arms moving between them. The entire operating room was precise and full of high technology, using machinery to perform biological operations. What shocked Badi was not the surgery, nor the high technology here, but a delicate, circuit board-like, but thin square board of about 3 centimeters. That is the biological chip of the Comet people. The biological chip can create creatures on any planet, and collect planetary information as a sentinel system. Hera answered very considerately, and added in an elegant and pleasant tone, it depends on the situation. Humans think that the function of this biological chip is to create superhumans. Once the human embedded in the chip is accidentally activated, it is likely that the state of the chip will be directly activated, thereby sending the information, location, and coordinates of the Earth to Comet. Badi's face was very ugly. Comet was destroyed 300 years before the existence of Krypton, and the historical information recorded in the Academy of Sciences does not know the reason. He said in a deep voice, "These materials are highly confidential. Even Jor-El's level may not be able to view them." This is what Badi downloaded and read when he fled Krypton. He knows a lot of secrets that ordinary Kryptonians cannot know. Some of them are wanted for this reason. The Academy of Sciences of Krypton may not know the reason, but he has some guesses. Brainiac, an artificial intelligence created by the Cometoids, developed wisdom and emotions, and destroyed the entire Cometoid. When Badi learned about the explosion of Cometoid, he had already guessed the reason from the comics, so he didn't pay any attention to it. At that time, it was enough to leave Krypton, and he didn't care about anything else. But he didn't expect to see the biochip from the Cometoids on Earth. Badi's face was slightly livid. Cometoid had been destroyed. It was no surprise that once this biochip was activated, the information band sent in the universe would definitely be received by Brainiac. The collector of this world, I'm afraid, will come and stuff the entire Earth into a small bottle and take it away and enjoy the struggle of the Earthlings. Human. Really stupid. Badi's face was stern, which was a great obstacle to his plan. Fortunately, this biochip was on the verge of semi-activation and had not been activated yet. Badi had a deep understanding of the human's suicidal behavior. This is simply a race that seeks death. It is simply stupid to create biological warriors with half knowledge. Especially, in 1977, NASA satellite carried a copper disc similar to a phonograph, record on Voyager 1, which contained greetings and various music recorded in 55 human languages, and send it into space to express human greetings to aliens. This is the stupidest thing humans have done. Stupid. You have fought to death on Earth. Why do you think aliens are gentle and kind, and will respond to you, and send greetings to outer space, which is simply a naked guide? Do you dislike that the earth is not dying fast enough? Bati's face sank. He didn't expect that the earth would have such a threat invisibly. At this stage, Badi is definitely not enough to be slapped by Brainiac. Fortunately, this guy must be wandering in the universe, and no one knows where he is swimming to. It is impossible for him to swim to Earth in a short time. What's more, the biochip has not been fully activated to send the coordinates of the Earth. Badi narrowed his eyes slightly, and there was a trace of urgency in his heart. The more he knew, the more he felt that he didn't have enough time, and he was not strong enough to conquer everything. Afterwards, he quickly read through the memories that Hera had sorted out. When he saw a monster about 7 meters tall, he was stunned. Then, a bit of anger emerged from his heart. He was sure that this was Jenny. Stupid Jenny who did such a stupid thing. Bati's face darkened, and he was angry at Jenny for doing such a stupid thing. Delete my alien identity from Sam Ryan's memory. Give a subconscious suggestion. Let Sam Ryan cover for us. After General Vic's death, Sam Ryan will take over General Vic's research, and at the same time, he will also take over the research results of Bamilodi, the biological warrior. Sam Ryan will then become my escort. Chapter 90, Buried Thread. The darker the night, the more it can bring out the brilliance and beauty of the stars. The sky is like a jewel shining on the dark curtain. The dark blue and white villa has a classical charm, but the furniture is placed in a standard manner, which makes it look orderly and decent, but it is a bit solemn, making people feel that the villa is a bit unsmiling. Outsiders dare not be casual about the owner of the villa and the people living in the villa. There are only little Louis and Lieutenant General Sam Lane in the villa. Sam Lane played with his daughter for a while with a doll. The daughter giggled and was lifted up high by him and thrown to catch. After a while, he carried his daughter to spin. It was warm and happy. He rarely had time to spend time with his daughter, so he was very happy. But the little girl was too young to play for more than half an hour. In addition, during the day, although he was not at home, the little girl was very active and wild, crawling and jumping everywhere. At night, she was tired and finally hung on Sam Lane's chest and fell asleep with Sam Lane patting her back gently. Sam Lane smiled knowingly and put her on the bed gently. His daughter slept in an unmannerly manner with her mouth pursed, as if she was eating in her dream, which made Sam Lane laugh. He gently kissed his daughter's forehead, but his daughter turned over again with her mouth pouting. It was obvious that her father's stubble made her feel itchy and uncomfortable. He gently covered her with the quilt, smiled and shook his head, but in his heart he was sighing at his daughter's cuteness. He held her in his palms and held her in his mouth, afraid that her cuteness would melt. He pressed the door handle lightly, closed it tightly, and then slowly let it go. The sound of the door closing was so slight that it did not wake up his daughter. Sam Ryan seemed to be relieved. He lifted his heels and walked away from the door. The farther he walked, the more he walked. His steps became more and more steady. He went up to the study on the 3rd floor. He entered the study, which was lit with soft warm lights. He sat on a chair. Suddenly, he had a familiar feeling, as if he had experienced this period of time before, and then turned it over again, and recalled it again. Sam Ryan paused for a moment. His eyelids trembled slightly, and he opened them. Suddenly, he felt a sense of fear, and his eyes were slightly tired. He looked around the study. The soft warm lights made it easy for people to fall asleep. He exhaled. Was he too tired? He pinched the bridge of his nose, refreshed himself, and looked at the test documents in front of the desk again. His thoughts returned to the present. With these, it is still not enough to bring down General Vic. These evidences are too weak. Sam Ryan put down the inspection documents, stood up, took a bottle of brandy from the clip on the other side, opened it, and poured half a glass of wine into the glass. Holding the glass, he walked to the window and opened it. The cool night wind blew on his face, making his face itchy, cool and refreshing, giving him a sense of reality. The night sky outside the window was still bright and beautiful, and the curtain was dotted with diamond stars. He drank half a glass of brandy in one gulp. The hot feeling brought him back to reality, and the feeling in his body and throat made him clearly feel the heat. He always felt like he was watching TV, and was not in it. Now, the heat returned to reality. It took him a long time to recover. He looked at the clock hanging on the wall. 23:10. Time passed really, unknowingly fast. He pondered for a moment. Perhaps he could contact Bamulodi and snatch this biological warrior from General Vic. General Vic was too wasteful. If he wanted to kill Bamulodi, it would be better for him to be alive. If he stayed alive, he might be able to provide some research materials for the US military. After thinking for half an hour, Sam Lane decided on something and turned off the light in the study. He went down to the study on the 3rd floor, gently opened his daughter's door, and took a look at his daughter who was sleeping. For some reason, he always felt that there should be something in his daughter's room. For example, a white figure? A ghost? He finally shook his head and felt that he was a little neurotic. Seeing that his daughter's room was normal, he breathed a sigh of relief and went straight back to his room and fell asleep soon. Badi deleted some of Sam Lane's memories, but did not change the memories. Any action that was too big to the memory would produce inharmonious differences. The more it moved in the memory, the more inharmonious it was, and the more strange it felt to oneself. It was like a sense of deja vu. It was like he had experienced it before. Badi deleted Sam Lane's memory of the film photos and did not modify his memory, but implanted the subconscious that Badi wanted from deep inside. The subconscious would continue to ferment in his mind, allowing him to escort Badi. The next time they meet, he will only subconsciously use Badi to further his career and protect Badi. It is like a silent moistening of things, and it is done quietly. After dealing with Sam Lane, Badi will deal with Deathstroke again. Similarly, Deathstroke is awake, staring with suppressed fear, unable to speak, hear, or move, with 3 information detection needles inserted on his head like a Teletubby. Deathstroke's physical strength is stronger than Sam Lane, and his brain's information thinking is too intense, so it is much more difficult than Sam Lane. Extract his memory. Badi held his left hand with his right hand, rubbed his thumb gently on the palm of his left hand, and fell into thinking. For Deathstroke, he arranged an enemy identity. Deathstroke will be the person who is most familiar with Badi. Deathstroke will be the person who has been targeting Badi, and Deathstroke will be Badi's enemy. With Hera's voice of extraction completed, Badi's eyes flashed, and he officially arranged the future of Deathstroke. To downplay his desire to tell others about my alien identity, and to increase his resentment towards me, his self-esteem, his competitive spirit, and his desire to kill me, and prove that he is more powerful. I will deal with General Vic later. After I leave, Deathstroke will flee from here, taking the future I want with him. In the future, Deathstroke will be the person who knows me best. Deathstroke, you will establish a country in Africa, recruit countless mercenaries, and become the king of mercenaries, just to be able to kill me. I will send people to compete with you and target you. At the same time, in the process of constantly harassing me, you will spy, rob, steal, and do everything you can to get all the technologies and potions I invented, to extend your life and strengthen your armed forces. You will be the person in the world who knows me best, and every move and action of mine will have meaning. One day, when heroes from all over the world unite to deal with me, you will join them, or maybe they will find you to join. Because you know me best. Then, Chapter 91. Make your choice. Slade came out of the temporary tent. The night was very dark, and this was the only place in the southern suburbs that was illuminated. He looked into the distance with one eye and saw an off-road military vehicle with its headlights like bayonets, piercing the light in the darkness, driving along the winding suburban road towards the metropolis in the dark. That was Sam Ryan's vehicle. Slade stood at the door of the temporary tent, straightened his body, looked into the distance, and witnessed his departure. Behind him was General Vic, who had just said goodbye to him, and was losing his temper in the tent, because he was out of control. His eyes watched Sam Ryan leave in the darkness. His footsteps walked towards the monster. He vaguely felt that the relationship between all people was like the silk thread in a cage, entangled him, and controlled him to make him uncomfortable. The temporary camp had strong lights at night, illuminating the place like daylight, but the monster in the corner still made people dare not shine strong lights directly on it, for fear of stimulating her to go crazy. This corner was a little dark. The light shone on the ground, reflecting the steel strips with the luster of fine steel metal. In the hazy and deep darkness, there seemed to be a terrifying monster. A fine steel cage nearly 10 meters high stood here. Slade gradually walked from the light to the darkness. The air seemed to tremble slightly, and the air was shaken by Jenna's huffing in the fine steel cage. She was in the fine steel cage, 7 meters tall, with huge limbs and bloated. The bones in her body kept growing and breaking, accompanied by flesh and keratin, mixed in the epidermis, and the epidermis was keratinized, protruding the thick white bones. Thick, terrifying, white bones, ugly monster. Her body was growing every moment, and every moment was accompanied by pain. The eyeballs, which were bigger than fists, were like sharp venomous snakes, constantly expanding and contracting, as sharp as knives. The painful huffing sound kept coming out of her mouth, and she breathed in the air. Ha ha. The air was shaken by Jenna's heavy breathing. Slade walked in front of her, and looked up at her. In the darkness, he could only see her eyes. Jenna's eyes were as big as 2 lanterns, and her pupils were slit, like a venomous snake, that was biting people. The white of her eyes was cracked with blood like climbing vines, which was terrifying. Slade narrowed his eyes, and stared at Jenny. He felt a heat wave burning his skin, which made him slightly moved. It was late autumn now, but when he was close to Jenny, there was a scorching heat wave, bursting from her body, making the air hot. Jenny's body temperature was extraordinary, and the air was almost steaming. "I have a question for you," Slade said. Jenny didn't speak directly, because it was a torture and pain for her to speak now. She could only hum deeply from her nose, and the sound shook the air. It was like facing the breath of a huge dinosaur. "Do you love Badi, or do you wish he would die?" Slade said again, his eyes narrowed and cold. Jenna's eyes shrank into a thin slit in an instant, which was terrifying. She couldn't help but think of the feeling of the most terrifying beast facing its prey. In an instant, the air seemed to be burning, and the heat wave rolled, burning Deathstroke's skin. "Ah!" She growled deeply, and a painful growl burst out from her throat. Now, every time she spoke, muscles and bones crossed her throat, and cells were torn everywhere, tearing her body apart. She didn't know how long she could hold on, or how long she could last, but she knew that she would definitely die. Slade didn't stop talking. "You still love him, so you gave General Vic hope, so that General Vic never reported Badi's true identity, and let him exist in a false ambition and power. He thought he could restore his position through you. He thought he could restore his power through you. He thought he could gain supreme power through you. Or this is what he thought. Or this is your temptation. Is it worth doing so much?" Slade said, staring deeply at the monster in front of him, then turned and sank into the darkness. "Everyone has their own schemes, their own plans, and their own goals." He said this to Jenny, just to tell Jenny that Badi will soon die at his hands. Whether Jenny really did this or not, he is here to destroy everything about Badi. His figure gradually walked into the darkness, towards the dark road, and the bustling metropolis in the distance. The wind of the night was whistling, invading his figure. He took out a yellow and black mask, and put it on, becoming a death knell, with a fierce one eye, and left the camp. The monster's eyes behind him were so sharp and terrifying. If Deathstroke was not lying on the operating table like a dead dog, then this memory played by Hera would have a tragic and heroic feeling, which would make people sigh. But now he is a prisoner of Badi, which makes people feel bad. After watching such a tragic memory, and seeing Deathstroke lying on the operating table like a dead dog, it is really a funny feeling. Badi supported his left hand with his right hand, and rubbed the palm of his left hand with his right thumb. After watching this memory that Hera suggested to watch, his eyes flickered. "So, Hera, why do you suggest me to watch this memory?" Badi asked. "It is impossible to know whether Jenny is like Deathstroke said. Everything is led by her, and everything comes from her help. So Badi's identity was not reported to the military by General Vic. But Jenny's existence alone is actually a reason for General Vic not to report it to the military. Master, I just think that you need to know her." Hera smiled gracefully. She had a bit of majesty as a mother of the country, and she was elegant and beautiful, with a graceful figure that made people's heart beat. She had intelligent emotions and understood Badi. She thought Badi needed to know this situation, so she told Badi. In fact, it was just as she expected. After reading it, Badi fell into deep thought. He nodded and said, "There is no equipment here that can upload consciousness and soul. The biochip of Comet Core can create organisms. As long as the information recorded in the biochip is released, Jenny's brain is removed, and the vacant biochip is used, she can be transformed into a human again. But the band recorded by the biochip cannot be intercepted with the current technological capabilities. That means telling Brainiac that the Earth is here." Hera's projection body was close to Bati's body, as if this could make Bati feel more at ease and make him less troubled. Since Krypton, there have been too many choices. The master has too many painful choices. Bati closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and said calmly, "I gave you the choice a long time ago. Attack me, die. I don't need disloyal slaves. Choose. Jenny, life or death." Chapter 92 will be released together with 2 chapters in the evening. After reading it several times, I felt very dissatisfied and felt that the effect was not very good. I deleted it and rewrote it. I will post both chapters together in the evening. Chapter 93 Slaves. South Suburb. The night sky was dark and scary, with a cold wind blowing. The bright moon and stars in the sky were dazzling, but they could not completely light up everything. The whole world was dark, and the darkness penetrated into the rocks, trees, soil, and cold wind. There was no place that was not dark. Bati walked in the darkness and the night whined. Behind him, all the woods, trees, flowers, soil, and cold wind became the background to set off him. In this dark world, he was the only one who stood out in white. His white windbreaker rustled and flew up like waves in the night whined. His figure was lonely and heavy, walking alone in this world, as if the whole world had no color, and he walked out of a black and white TV. His expression was indifferent, very cold, cold to the bone. But there was a hint of fierceness in his eyes, and the anger that was suppressed. Who can be ruthless? His emotions were even richer, and he hated Jenny for becoming this monster now. It was hard to say right or wrong. If he had not taken the initiative to shoot Jenny and run away with her, he would have been able to run away with the corpse. He had no way to take care of Jenny. In the Underground Research Institute, the ground military base, and even in the final air battle with the fighter jets, Jenny would be in danger and die easily. Even if she didn't die and was caught, Jenny would definitely be abused and tortured because of his escape. Badi didn't want to see this scene, and tried his best to suppress his inner thoughts and shot Jenny with the gun. Perhaps when she fell to the ground like a blood lotus, curled up in the ground, and cried, she felt despair for Badi. Badi gritted his teeth, his eyes faintly red, and his anger was extremely terrifying. "Jenny, why are you so stupid? You just need to wait for me to gain a firm foothold in the metropolis. After a while, even if you are detained in the midst of thousands of troops, I have the ability to break through the army and save you among millions of people. And now, you have become a monster without any pity." In the darkness, his red eyes reflected his endless anger. He almost burst into hot eyesight and raised his head to vent, but he endured it. His strong and resolute heart allowed him to endure the inner torture and the injustice and chaos from the whole world. So he wanted to conquer the world, change it according to his own ideas, or destroy it. No matter what, this world runs according to his own ideas. The more he endured, the more tortured he became. This torture made his whole body boil and burn. Red veins were branded around his eyes, which was terrifying. In this world, in the darkness, a pair of red eyes gradually approached the camp. In the darkness, they were like burning out of angry lava, and like the red eyes of a ferocious beast in the darkness, cruel and tyrannical. With anger at himself, anger at his own powerlessness, even with his current strength, there were things he couldn't do. This powerless anger made people crazy. Just like in the previous life. The humiliation was crazy and tortured his heart. Nothing could be done. Everything was in vain. He was shot for letting his family reunite in a travel bag. But the torment that tore his heart and lungs would never disappear. There was also anger towards Jenny. He liked others to be loyal to him, to love him loyally, to believe in him, and to have faith in himself. As long as you are loyal to me, then I will love you. And for those who are not loyal to him, every moment is a torment for Bati's heart, which comes from the torment left over from his previous life, torturing him and driving him crazy. He is a person who is suffering from torment in his heart every moment. What is that? The red eyes stepped out of the darkness, extremely conspicuous, and were seen by the soldiers in the camp. The red eyes in the darkness were like light in the abyss, terrifying, and gradually moved towards him. The air around seemed to be sticky, and the oppression made people swallow saliva. The soldiers on the sentry felt palpitations inexplicably, and their breathing tightened suddenly. The camp illuminated by strong lights was as quiet as death at this time. There was no rustling around, as if a fearful demon had descended, causing some tiny insects to not dare to chirp randomly, and making this area seem to be isolated from the surrounding darkness. There was strong lighting here, very bright, but it seemed to be independent, separated from the world. Here, it was isolated from the world, isolated from the darkness. The whole world was dark, and only here was there light. Suddenly, in a 10-meter high steel cage, Jenny opened her eyes. Her eyelids were as rough as sandpaper, accompanied by keratin rubbing against her eyeballs, like needles scratching through her eyeballs, scratching out pain. Her lantern-sized eyes suddenly opened and looked into the distance. Her huge body's breathing stopped. Her eyeballs widened and trembled. At this moment, she seemed to have no pain at all, and she did not feel the tearing of her body, bones, muscles, fibers, and cells at all. Yes, there was only a series of hormones that dominated love in the body, such as phenylethylamine, dopamine, norepinephrine, endorphin, posterior pituitary hormone, serotonin, estrogen, angiotensin, etc. All the hormones related to love washed away the pain of her cells being torn apart. In an instant, she saw Badi full of happiness and excitement, but deep sorrow surged in her heart. Buzz, the ground was shaking small particles of soil. She moved, her lower limbs were as thick as tree stumps, and the heavy sound of stepping on the ground sounded like piling. Her face poked out from the darkness, and approached the refined steel bars. The faint light reflected on her ugly and terrifying face, and her head was illuminated from the darkness. Her eyes were sour, moist, and watery, but she looked so ugly. She saw Badi coming out of the darkness. His eyes were bright and blood red. The dark curtain became his background. The world was left behind by him, and he walked with the might of a god. The white clothes set off his tall and majestic figure. He was like a true god who had descended to the earth, looking down on the world from the top of the mountain. This was a different Badi, beyond the Badi she had known before, like a god descending to earth. However, she had become a monster. She felt sore in her heart, that her eyes were blurry and tears were flowing out. But she had evolved and covered her tear glands in this evolution, so her eyes were blurry, and the blurry blood was bleeding, and her vision was blurred. Blurred the white figure. Shima. Her arms were like pillars of a house, thick and keratinous, with broken bones protruding, very rough and ugly, which was a world of difference from the white arms that embraced Badi in the past. Just by pulling the fine steel bar with both hands, the entire 10-meter high fine steel was firmly squeezed, and it made a teeth-grinding squeezing sound, and was pulled apart and twisted by a pair of big hands, revealing a big mouth. Jenny lowered her head and stomped on the ground to come out. She was not just 7 meters tall. The 7 meters tall was because she was sitting in a steel cage. Now she stood up, 13 meters tall, with a huge body, heavy hands and feet, and a body covered with pale broken bones and thick keratin. The heat waves radiating from her body heated the surroundings, and the scorching air frightened the soldiers around her. Jenny is out. A soldier quickly ran to report to General Vic. Jenny looked even more terrifying, and it was frightening to look at. The 13-meter body was huge and bloated. In this camp, it stood upright. Under the strong light, the shadow covered a large area, a 4-story high figure. If you look at a 4-story building, you may not feel much fear. Once it is a 4-story high giant, your body only reaches her ankles, and it will naturally make people feel fear and terrified. Jenny walked to the entrance of the camp, looking at the red eyes in the dark with pain and complexity. The redness in Badi's eyes gradually disappeared, and when his eyes opened and closed, he returned to his indifferent eyes. He suppressed his anger. On the way here, he could be angry and furious, but once facing anyone, he would hide all his emotions and face everyone with indifference. After experiencing the Underground Research Institute, military base, Nevada to Gotham, across most of the United States, in the metropolis, in the southern suburbs, Badi stepped into the light of the camp. The light gradually spread from his feet, rising up his whole body, illuminating his white figure. He stepped here and met Jenny again. Are you still my slave? A slave of love. Chapter 94. Naughty child. Are you still my slave? A slave of love. Blood gushed out of Jenna's lantern-like eyes. Blood dripped down as big as a fist. In the air, it was illuminated by the strong light and looked crystal clear. Then it dripped to the ground, splashed and spread, and seeped into the soil. She stretched out her right hand and wanted to show it to Badi. There was a ring there, the ring that Badi had prepared to propose to her in the sun. No matter what, you are my Badi. I will never change you in this life. I'm your most loyal Badi. I'm your slave, a slave of love. You said so. Mute. Jenny wanted to make a sound, looking at Badi, trying her best to make a sound. Then she saw her own hand again, which was rough and ugly, with pale bones protruding, thick keratin, grey-black arms, black pigmentation, and skin flakes sticking to the flesh. It was such an ugly hand. The ring on the finger had already sunk into the flesh of the finger. She couldn't even see it herself, so what could she show to Badi? Blood as big as a fist formed a string of blood beads, dripping continuously to the ground, splashing and spreading, making the area seep with a strong smell of blood. Her body was filled with intense pain, which was so painful that it drove her crazy. Every bone was breaking, and every heartbeat was like a needle piercing her heart. She was a monster. She was so terrified that she looked at her hands blankly. It seemed to say, "Where is the ring?" At this time, General Vic came out of the barracks, followed by Colonel Willie, a biochemical warrior, who had a semi-activated Comet Sentinel system biochip in his mind. With the appearance of General Vic, the laser weapons and ultrasonic weapons in the camp were all aimed at Badi at the door, ready to go. General Vic's face was gloomy and angry. He arranged everything against Badi in a gloomy manner before appearing here. Seeing Jenny looking at her hand so stupidly, he immediately became angry, his face ugly, and he shouted angrily, "Jenny, what are you doing?" Jenny seemed to be awakened by General Vic's shouting. She turned her head to look at him, and she didn't know what to do. How to face Badi, how to talk to him. She was confused, and shed tears as big as fists. Her heart and body were just in extreme pain, and every cell was bitten by ants. She longed to see Badi, longed to hug Badi, but she was also afraid of meeting him. Between meeting and not meeting, she was in a contradictory fear, and didn't know what to do. Now that she saw you, she didn't know what to do. Can I still hold you in my arms, kiss you deeply, and hug you tightly like in the underground laboratory? Can I still happily get close to your body, sit on your thighs, listen to your heartbeat, and hug me with your hands? I don't know if I can still do it. Jenny felt extremely painful in her heart, and there was no way to release it. General Vic was furious when he saw Jenny like this. He glared at her and almost lost his mind. He just wanted Badi to die. He didn't care about anything else. It was Badi who destroyed everything for him. He just needed to stay quietly in the institute. Why did he come out again? Wasn't what he had given enough? He thought he was magnanimous enough to give Badi the right to act, to give Badi and Jenny the opportunity to love each other, and to give him the gift. It was his luck that they had the opportunity to love each other now. Don't cherish it, don't cherish it, then die. General Vic thought distortedly in his heart. He didn't expect that it was because of him that everything happened now. Seeing Badi in front of him, he just wanted Badi to die, just wanted his body to restore his reputation, status, rights, and the power he would have in the future. He was furious and roared with all his strength. Kill him for me. Kill this beast. General Vic's face was distorted with anger, and his roar spread out in the quiet camp, very loud and angry. The wind seemed to stop in an instant. The entire bright camp was silent, and you could hear a pin drop. Jenna's whole body was in pain in an instant, the pain of cells tearing, the pain of bones growing continuously, and the unspeakable pain in her heart, all gathered into anger in an instant. Her 13-meter-long huge and bloated body suddenly turned into an ancient giant beast, emitting scorching heat waves from her body, scalding the air, and her eyes were as angry as an angry venomous snake, standing up into a crack, oozing with blood, sharp and terrifying. Jenna's anger rushed to her ugly face in an instant, and her eyes were red with anger. No one can hurt Badi, she roared angrily. The sound was deafening, tearing her vocal cords and making a vague roar, shaking the air in the entire camp area, and the sound waves rolled far away. With a roar, all ordinary people nearby had their ears buzzing and deafening. General Vic was even more horrified. Jenny's body temperature heated up the air and passed it to his skin, making him feel as if he was being roasted by fire. The rolling air burned his skin, and his hair curled up. His mouth and tongue were dry. The roaring sound really made his ears deaf and his eyes dark. After Jenny roared, her eyes were about to burst. Her big hand swept directly towards General Vic, whirring like a strong wind. She could not allow anyone to hurt Badi. Colonel Willife, who was behind General Vic, was agile. She sensed the danger and quickly pushed General Vic, who was dizzy from the roar, away. She also fell to the ground. The big hand swept past like a hurricane, like an ordinary person slapping a chicken, but the chicken dodged it. Jenny glared with anger and stepped forward with a rumbling foot, causing the ground to shake. She stretched out her palm again, and her whole big hand seemed to reach into the soft soil, digging a hole out of it. The lower half of General Vic's body was held in Jenny's fist, and the soil was connected. Jenny, a 13-meter tall giant, was like an unhappy child, holding a doll she didn't like, and smashing it down to the ground. Bang! General Vic woke up instantly, awakened by the strong wind, and was horrified that his legs were out of control. The whole person faced the ground, and with a bang, Jenny smashed him to the ground. Jenny's current strength was more than 100 tons. He was directly bloody and unrecognizable. The moment he was smashed, he had already died of brain concussion. It can be said that he died very quickly. There was only a few tenths of a second of fear, and he died very quickly. How could an ordinary person survive facing such a giant? I won't allow you to hurt Badi. Jenny's voice was hoarse and her eyes were red with anger. She smashed General Vic once, raised her hand again, and smashed it down again with a bang. She was really like an unhappy child smashing his toys. It's not that Valiva, the biochemical warrior created by the biochip, could not be saved, but as soon as she took action to save him, she was slapped away by Jenny again. The impact shattered her internal organs and bones, and she was completely silent. Her 1,000-pound strength was directly killed by Jenny's hundreds of tons of strength. General Vic was smashed down by Jenny several times in a row with a roar, until his bones were shattered, his spine could not maintain a human shape, and his upper body flew out. Jenny threw the lower half of his body and legs directly into the camp. A shocking pair of legs, a pair of General Vic's dead legs. The soldiers in the camp recovered from the drowsy and paralyzed state of the roar and gasped. Fire. Chapter 95. Still. The night sky was desolate, the stars were shining. It was the only bright spot in the endless darkness. In the camp, there was a bloodbath. Jenny stepped forward with her huge and ugly body, stepped on the camp. At this moment, she was a war beast, easily throwing away human bodies, holding the tank barrel, lifting the tank with one hand, and smashing it down. The camp fell into chaos. Fires were everywhere, screams, explosions, gunfire, and roars of anger rose continuously. Supersonic weapons. Laser weapons. Aim at her. Aim at her. The next soldier inherited General Vic's command and directed the weapons to aim at Jenny. However, because the noise was too loud, Jenny heard it. Angry Jenny picked up a military off-road vehicle and threw it at him. The vehicle was smashed to the ground by the huge force, making a loud noise. The vehicle was squeezed and twisted. The tires were spinning. The fuel tank was damaged. A large amount of gasoline splashed and flowed. The smell was unpleasant. The sparks ignited, and it quickly burned up, and with a bang, it became an explosion of flames. As for the officer, he was already pressed deep into the vehicle and died. The ordinary human body cannot resist this abnormal force of hundreds of tons. Jenny's body is bloated and huge, but her movements are not slow. She has hundreds of tons of strength, and even her explosive power exceeds that of ordinary vehicles. It is very difficult for humans to avoid her attacks. After all, not everyone is like Batman, who can dodge a few attacks from abnormal creatures. Other soldiers, even the elite, find it difficult to fight Jenny. Badi still stood in front of the camp gate, and did not destroy it with Jenny. He looked at Jenny. It felt that Jenny was giving him this gift. Deathstroke might be right. In fact, it was Jenny who had been guiding General Vic to keep his identity secret. That was why he had a few years of breathing space. Badi felt a little warm in his heart. He was not a plant, so how could he be ruthless? His eyes were slightly warm, and he let go of his anger towards Jenny. He had experienced betrayal in his previous life. The deeper the love, the harder it was for the person to pull himself out of the abyss. Until now, when he recalled the past, it was still a heart-wrenching torture that he could not forget. There are always some people who leave marks in your life. The worse they are, the clearer you remember them, the sadder, the more painful, and the more tormented you are. The more you can't forget them, the more painful it is to recall them. The experience in his previous life made it difficult for him to trust anyone. Because people are so easily shaken, they will easily abandon the original and pursue the new because of money, power, honor, status, beauty, etc. Or it can be said to be a kind of survival of the fittest, or greed, or just trying something new. Who can tell? Badi knew what he needed. He needed loyalty. What he needed was to follow himself, never betray, believe in himself, and regard himself as the only loyal one. He looked at Jenny. In the sea of fire in the camp, the huge and ugly beast seemed a little cute, like a big child destroying, tearing ants, and venting anger angrily. This is for himself! Exclamation mark. Badi smiled bitterly in his heart. He always felt that he saw himself in his previous life from Jenny. Why is love always so tormenting? Badi sighed in his heart. Jenny's dedication made his heart warm up a little from the nightmare. Everyone who tries his best to give for love actually wants to get love from the other person. There is no selflessness, only selfishness. He is also selfish. Badi raised his head gently. He looked at the sky, and the bright stars were shining. Since you compare loyalty, unforgettable loyalty, then, as a man, I can stand in front of you and break the world of heaven and earth. I'm the only one in the world. But a huge noise sounded in the camp. The supersonic wave was originally designed according to the frequency of Badi, and it was a weapon completely targeting Badi. Jenny knew it, because she was the one who provided the true and false data. Now it was used against her, and it was not surprising. She jumped up, and her huge body was able to jump, which was terrifying. When she landed, she had already trampled the supersonic wave's mobile vehicle to pieces. The ground was like a wave, rolling up thick smoke and sweeping away. She roared in pain in the sea of fire. Her eyes were red, and she roared with tears of blood, waving her huge arms to vent her anger and pain that had nowhere to go. Two dark muzzles rose up, and light condensed in the muzzles. It was a super high temperature laser. Two orange lasers shot out in the camp of rumbling fire, shooting towards Jenna's huge body, directly shooting through Jenna's shoulder, causing her to scream in pain. Badi's eyes turned cold. Seeing this, his eyes suddenly turned red, burning the skin around his eyes. Boom. The thermal vision contained a strong impact force and a temperature that could melt steel and stone, and it directly penetrated the air. When the two gun barrels were ready to fire lasers again, the red thermal vision shot out and hit the gun barrels, causing the gun barrels to explode. Badi's head moved slightly, and the red thermal vision was like a laser gun, controlled by him to shoot and clear the area. Clusters of lasers were like meteors from outer space, shooting into the camp that was caught in the flames of war. Every shot of thermal vision rays accurately hit every ordinary soldier. This was a massacre. Badi stood here, using his far-sightedness, penetrating vision, and thermal vision to kill people with his eyes. Calm and composed, his eyes flashed red, and one person died. So powerful, taking lives easily. Who dares to say he is not a god? The last sound that pierced the air was the soldier's shrill scream. He was hit in the waist by the heat vision and broke into two pieces. He crawled on the ground in fear, crying and pulling his internal organs, and gradually died. He had already hidden under the cover, but he still couldn't escape death. The sea of fire in the camp spread and burned, and the swaying black smoke sank into the black curtain in the sky and rose very high. Jenna's tall body stopped moving. She seemed to be burning in the sea of fire. She was tall, ugly, and the black smoke baked on her body. Still bitter and painful. Badi's heat vision helped, as if it was the sunshine in winter, slightly warming her dead body. Her eyes were sour and blood flowed out of the blood beads. It's so hard. So happy. So painful. So happy. So sad. So desperate. I miss you so much. Badi. She tore her already hoarse voice and said with all her strength, "Can I still hug you?" If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 96. I'm God. The flames and black smoke swayed and rose, heating up the temperature. It was already late autumn, and in the southern suburbs of this metropolis, the darkness was torn apart by the flames. Jenna's body was huge, 4 stories high, very scary, standing alone in the sea of fire, with nowhere to stay. When there were no obstacles and only 2 people were left, they could hear the crackling sound of the flames burning around them. The breeze was shaking the flames, and wisps of black smoke twisted and rose to the sky in the ruins. Jenny was sad and didn't know how to face Badi, and she was in pain. Badi stared at her. She was very tall, with 2 big eyes like lanterns, protruding like snake pupils, with bloodshot under the whites of her eyes, and accompanied by blood and tears. All kinds of keratin and white bones stuck out upside down. It is conceivable what kind of pain she endured, uninterrupted pain, to persist until this day to see herself. Badi suddenly smiled, a faint and gentle smile, the smile that Jenny liked most in the past. He opened his arms, his eyes smiling, the same smile as always. But things and people have changed. There was a loud rumbling sound on the ground, and every step Jenny took on the ground shook the firelight into a trance, and the ground trembled and jumped up with stones, which were shaken. There was no moment when Jenny didn't want to hug Badi completely. She was eager and ran, with blood splashing behind her. Touched, sat, indescribable emotions, pain, despair, suffering, all of this. After Badi opened his arms, all of this was worth it. She just wanted to be by his side and cry loudly. Jenna's footsteps rumbled, and her tall shadow covered Badi. She knelt down, but she actually had no knees. Every step she ran was a tear, and kneeling was also a pain, tearing the Achilles tendon muscles. Her whole body was lying on the ground. Her big hands were shoveling from the outside to the inside. Even the ground was shoveled. The weeds and grass on the ground were directly plowed clean, pushing the sand dunes higher and higher. When her hands were about to approach Badi, she paused for a moment, then held her hands carefully like a fragile treasure. Her eyeballs were sore and blood kept flowing out, and her ugly and unusually large mouth was tightly pursed, as if she was a little girl, pursing her lips tightly, trying not to cry. Badi suddenly felt the air burning. Jenna's body was like an exploding bomb. The heat entered the magma, burning the air. He saw Jenna's cautiousness, and he couldn't help but feel a little upset. Jenny was huge. She bent down. Her head was bigger than Badi's. She tilted her neck. Badi came forward, hugged her, and held her aorta with both hands. Jenna's temperature was abnormally high, and the restless cells were burning hot, boiling hot. The skin was bumpy and scratchy, with sharp bone protrusions. The face seemed to be covered with sharp scratchy white bone fragments and blood marks. The touch was very bad, very bad. Jenny collapsed. Her hands tightly held Badi, and blood beads dripped from her eyeballs. Ah! Jenny cried out, blood beads, as big as fists. They dripped onto Badi's body, and fell from his head, dyeing his hair sticky, blurring his eyes, and dyeing his white clothes red. A fishy smell came into his nose, and he opened his mouth and tasted it. It was very fishy. He hugged Jenny tighter, feeling sorry in his heart. Badi. Jenny cried and pulled her hoarse throat. The blood beads that collapsed became a river, pouring out hotly. Every word she said was accompanied by greater pain, the pain of tearing her throat. Crying, sadness, and joy were all accompanied by tearing pain. I am in so much pain. Jenny sobbed and spoke incoherently. Her voice was as loud as thunder, shaking the air around her. Her body and spirit were close to collapse. The last string was too tight. I know, Jenny. Bear with me, I have a way. Badi said in a hoarse voice. Before Badi finished speaking, Jenna's sobbing and crying were cut off. No blood flowed from her eyes. She swallowed and sobbed, wanted to hiccup. Her internal organs, every inch of flesh and blood twitched. Badi, let's die together. Living is so painful. Jenny's voice became weaker and weaker, and in an instant it seemed as if the string had broken. Giving up the pain. Giving up. The hands surrounding Badi relaxed. There was no blood flowing out of his big eyes. It had already shed blood. The pain and love in his eyes. The tension in Badi's eyes relaxed. The pain seemed to begin to leave. His eyelids were filled with millions of pounds of strength, pulled down, and closed. When Badi heard Jenna's words, he was startled, and a feeling of extreme panic surged from the bottom of his heart. Jenny, don't give up. I have a way. Badi still didn't finish his words. Jenna's body was pierced with light, and the red light surged under her keratinized skin. Under her keratinized skin, it reflected the redness of lava, which was like a volcano about to erupt, surging inside. There was light piercing from her body, and the light was stronger than the strong light, piercing the sky. Then there were many more intense lights, piercing from every inch of her body, piercing from her body. She was like a hedgehog pierced by light. All this happened too fast. In just one sentence, Jenny gave up on herself. In fact, Jenny had already had a mental breakdown long before. It was when Badi shot her and curled up in the ground. It was when General Vic found her and she pressed her wound frantically and blood oozed out of the gauze. It was when she became a monster and sat in the fine steel cage. She couldn't bear it anymore. I can't control it anymore. No. Badi's eyes were moist, tears welled up, filling the terrariums. He had a way to save Jenny, a way to turn Jenny back to her original appearance, and for this, he would not hesitate to face people from the stars. Because no one was so loyal to him anymore, and no one could still love him, no matter what he did. He was alone in this world, loving him regardless of everything, making him feel his existence, loving him from behind. This was enough for Badi to face any powerful enemy. He held Jenny tightly with both hands, piercing Jenny with thousands of feet of light. The touch was not good, rustling, sharp, like holding a handful of glass. Even in pain, his hands were still holding tight. Suddenly, his hands were empty, and in an instant, it seemed as if everything was empty. Between his fingers, fierce flames pierced out. In the end, he could not catch anything. The raging flames exploded against his body, and the white clothes were instantly torn, ignited, and burned. The intense heat burned his skin. It burned his eyes, and evaporated his tears. He was lost in the sea of fire. His hands were empty. All around him were fiery red heat waves, rolling towards him, burning his skin. He was in the sea of fire, not injured at all, but felt pain all over his body, suffocating. The strong flames were burning all around. Suddenly, a silver white ring floated in front of him, rolling in the flames, and began to turn red. The inside of the ring was engraved with Jenny and Badi. The ring flashed in front of Badi, and was pushed by the flames, and rolled into his empty palm. It was hot, red, and about to melt. Badi clenched his hand into a fist, and held the ring. Boom. In the dark night, a light suddenly lit up, gradually dazzling, and a huge sound exploded. The sound was like a thunderous roar, spreading for dozens of miles. The shock wave spread far away. The nearby weeds and trees were pressed close to the ground by the hurricane. The whistling wind bent the nearby trees and made them unable to stand up. The grass was plowed up, and the soil was splashed. Explosions suddenly rose within a radius of 700 meters, mixed with black smoke, burning and rising turbid fireballs in this dark night. The flames burned and rose. He clenched his fists and walked out of the sea of fire. His hair was mixed with crystal red light, and the flames were sticking to his body. He was naked, as if he had walked out of the abyss of hell. His figure was tall and mighty, but he could not cover the flames all over the sky. His strength could destroy the world, but it was not enough to destroy the earth. His face was sad, and tears flowed from the corners of his eyes. He opened his clenched fist, and the ring lay quietly in the palm of his hand. He gritted his teeth. His eyes were ferocious. The firelight swayed behind him, and was thrown away by him. His back was illuminated by the firelight, lonely, walking alone, looking at the ring on his hand, and walking towards the darkness. He was heading one day. I step on the stars, conquer dimensions, and tear apart the dimension. When I reverse time, I will save you from this moment. I will become a god. I'm a god. Give you hope. Give you laughter. Give you love. Chapter 97. Please don't. Metropolis, South. This is already in the city, in the Pirantis district in the south, a prosperous entertainment area, a major entertainment area in the south of Metropolis. It has some of the best entertainment in Metropolis, Disneyland, Ocean Park, prosperous gambling industry and shows, the world-class Cirque du Soleil stationed here, exquisite 5-star food, art exhibitions and cultural performances. This is the famous paradise of happiness and art in Metropolis. At the same time, this is also the area where Tobias Wheel's Organization 100 is located. This southern area of Metropolis is his position. He manages many black companies, underground casinos, shows, nightclubs, drug powder, and weapons. Even some world-renowned entertainment companies have to pay him a lot of security fees to gain a foothold here. Otherwise it will be bad if someone often throws shit and urine at your company. We are all civilized people, businessmen, capitalists, and it is better to make money together. Even if the strong dragon can overwhelm the local snake, it will not be easy. Organization 100, which has been rooted in the southern area of Metropolis for decades, definitely has this power. Now Tobias Wheel himself is already Bati's subordinate. In all senses, Badi is already the king of this area, and can easily make any international company unable to survive here. Of course, soon, this area will not be managed as it is now. Badi will soon take over all of Tobias Wheel's power, and arrange his strategic plan for the future in the Metropolis. In the morning, the sun spreads golden light and jumps out from the distant horizon. There is a slightly cool breeze unique to late autumn blowing through the morning, brushing across the skin, sticking to Bati's paws, and smoothly passing through his body. This entertainment area is also particularly quiet this morning. There is a late autumn wind blowing, and the early risers are tightly wrapped in windbreakers, their necks retracted inside, stepping on the withered yellow leaves. There are also downtrodden people who yawn tiredly after a night of fun, shake off the cold wind, tremble their bodies, and walk on the street with squinting eyes. It is very quiet and cool, with a bleak fallen leaf, pedestrians tired, and a quiet atmosphere. The golden sunlight jumped out from the horizon, piercing the white sky with golden light, and the white clouds were gradually stained with golden light. Badi's face was peaceful, not indifferent, nor sad. It was just a kind of peace and tranquility that had been through vicissitudes and welcomed the surface of the water without even a ripple. It was a very enjoyable and comfortable state of tranquility. When the sun shone on his body, the golden light seemed to penetrate his body, like the beauty of a white jade sculpture, the limbs and muscles divided into perfect proportions, and the body that was smooth, but not without majestic spirit, which always made people admire and indulge. This is already a work of art, a perfect work of art. His eyelids trembled, and he slowly opened his eyes, and the golden light shone into his eyes. A faint halo appeared on his body, like a god-emitting light. The operation of the body's cells greedily absorbed the energy of the sun, causing a slight wave in his heart, no longer as calm as before, and ripples on the water surface. An exquisite silver white ring danced on Bati's right finger. His finger was like playing a sad song, rising and falling slowly and flexibly. The cold ring rubbed against the skin between his fingers, shining silver in the sun, as if a little elf was jumping on his finger. His eyes fell into stagnant contemplation. The sun outlined his side profile. His face was like a sculpture made of a knife and axe, and under the slanting light, it seemed to become a beautiful and eternal contemplative picture. Jenny's behavior was unexpected to him. He did not expect that Jenny could deceive General Vic and destroy General Vic after so many things to keep her identity secret. Even from the end of all this, Badi saw a lot. Jenny did not want to help Slack become the death knell, but because of the gap between him and her. This gap in power, the gap between Earthlings and aliens. Maybe Jenny actually had inferiority in her heart, or maybe Jenny was too afraid of losing herself, or maybe Jenna's unpredictable psychological attitude and thoughts about herself made her collapse. She was not sure to guess and capture Badi's thoughts, without knowing whether Badi really deceived her, used her, and abandoned her. Even though her heart kept echoing the desperate moment when Badi pointed a gun at her on the underground laboratory in the first floor. Even so, in the end she still chose to help Badi and guide General Vic to keep Badi's identity secret. Make serum to get close to Badi. It is the desire to have more Badi, to be closer to Badi, to love Badi normally. She also knows that Badi will gradually keep basking in the sun, and keep getting stronger. She wants to have strength and a strong body to hug Badi. There is just a little mistake. Deathstroke has a strong will to survive. He gained power, and at the same time, he is still a human form. Jenny has a strong obsession, will and desire. She gained power, unfortunately, became a monster. A monster that is always strong and painful at any time and anywhere, and needs to persist. The moment you relax your mind and let go of everything, the monster will collapse and explode. All this is just because of, want to hug me, Badi muttered to himself. He lost a good helper. Jenna's talent in biology was beyond doubt. He lost a good lover, someone who could help him consistently. Someone who was always loyal to him. A lover who finally couldn't stand the pain. Jenna's collapsed words could still be heard in Badi's ears. I am in pain. Yes. The mental and physical pain made it impossible for her to hold on. The ring that was jumping between Badi's right fingers stopped and fell from his fingers. He clenched his fist and held the ring in his palm. His eyes flashed. In the sun, his face, which looked like it was carved by a knife, was firm and shining with a halo. The next city to be deployed. Let's choose. Central City. The hotel door was knocked several times in a row, and the hotel employee girl who came to deliver breakfast opened the door directly and pushed the dining cart into the room. She looked around the luxurious room and didn't see anyone as expected. She walked straight to the open window balcony. The expensive and soft dark red carpet was covered with shadows cast by the sun through the curtains, which were fluttering in the breeze. She turned her head and saw that Badi was shining in the sun, emitting a halo of white jade sculpture, like a work of art. Anger was tense between her eyebrows, and she tried to suppress the smile of a service staff on her beautiful face and said, "Sir, please don't lie naked on the roof." Chapter 98. Don't mind. "Sir, please don't lie naked on the roof," the beautiful lady in the guest room said with a tight smile on her face. She had a pretty figure and a delicate face, and she was very rude to Badi. Because Badi had been here for 3 days, she could find him on the roof every day from the first day, and it was the same every day. This had a huge impact on the hotel. More than a dozen couples had quarreled over this matter, and the male owner had complained many times. Many women also dressed up early in the morning and admired and drooled at this body from the opposite side. "Sir, you have affected the normal business of our hotel." After the beautiful lady in the guest room finished speaking, a dark shadow suddenly appeared in front of her. The sun shone down from behind him, with a broad chest, shoulders, and a tall figure. The beautiful lady in the guest room only reached Badi's neck, and she felt as if she was pressed down by the whole person, making her breath stagnate. She glared, her heart was beating, her face was flushed, and she almost couldn't control herself. The distance was too close, and the male's hot breath rushed straight to her face. No wonder the group of female guests opposite were staring at him. Her heartbeat never slowed down. She helped Badi put on his clothes, and she was annoyed and angry. She was so embarrassed. She was told that no matter what Badi did to her, she had to obey, otherwise she would not be able to survive in the metropolis. Her body temperature rose a few degrees, and she was very angry. She gritted her teeth in hatred of using power, money, and status to threaten her. This was the territory of the Organization 100. No one could easily disobey them. Those who didn't listen were gone. The beautiful lady in the guest room was still afraid of death. She secretly hated it in her heart, just like being oppressed by a ghost. After being oppressed, she could get a promotion. This was good. This was good. But there was always a trace of involuntary anger and helplessness in her heart. However, Badi was not in the mood. After putting on his clothes, he ate nutritious salad, bacon, fried eggs, and geisha coffee. This coffee was the most expensive coffee in the world. With Badi's current status, the people below all made everything for Badi to enjoy the best. This was the invisible power of the ruler. Everything was centered on Badi, and he was flattered. After finishing breakfast, Badi gently stirred his coffee. The coffee was no longer hot and bitter. There was no sugar or milk. It was so bitter that it made people frown. He sent the beautiful lady in the guest room out and asked her to inform Tobias Wheel to come over. The beautiful lady in the guest room breathed a sigh of relief that she didn't have to sacrifice her body, but at the same time, she felt a little sorry. She didn't know if she could get promoted like this. Almost a week had passed. The explosion of the temporary military camp outside the southern suburbs had been blamed on Deathstroke by General Ryan. Deathstroke became the wanted criminal with the highest bounty in the history of the United States. He subconsciously fled to Africa and was planning to build his power. Because he found that Badi would establish power in the metropolis, he would not let go of his power as he always wanted to kill Badi. He was about to start a war in Africa and establish a country. Tobias Wheel arrived. His body was as big as two people standing side by side. He almost couldn't even get through the door. He leaned sideways to get in and report to Badi. Boss, the remnants of Organization 100 have been pacified, and this place is now under your control. Tobias Wheeler hunched his body slightly, looking like a subordinate who obeys orders. Give me 80% of the funds of the original Organization 100, and leave 20% for maintenance. Badi blew a mouthful of the foam on the coffee, took a sip, and looked at Tobias Wheeler. Badi's Cosmic Biotechnology Co. Limited developed very smoothly. Knowing that all kinds of brainless advertisements and show advertisements would be used in the future and large amounts of funds would be dispersed, the whole metropolis knew about Cosmic Biotechnology Co. Limited. The effects of diabetes drugs, heart disease special drugs, and sildenafil were better than any drugs on the market. In addition, Hera also controlled and took out some drugs for children and women's skin care, which were particularly easy to make money. The whole metropolis was simply ringing with the name of Cosmic Biotechnology Co. Limited this week, and it didn't stop for a long time. Everyone knew that a large corporate group was about to rise in the metropolis. Now this big enterprise is in debt, with a debt of nearly $3 billion US. Banks dare not lend money. Some upper-class capitalists in Metropolis have begun to see the rising corporate group and have begun to plunder it. After checking the first batch of funds and borrowed capital, Badi found that it was still too little to satisfy his ambition to expand rapidly. In the future, he will also build a technology company, attack weapons in the field of military weapons, cooperate with the US military, and plan to control most of the US military equipment, etc. The funds returned, and the debt funds are just like a small drop of water. How can it be enough? Tobias Wheel was stunned. Organization 100 has been standing in Metropolis for decades, and has a lot of assets. Badi's words are no less than digging up his old bottom. If he really gives it, then his entire assets will be severely reduced. He is really like a loyal subordinate of Badi. He became Badi's subordinate, not without the hope of gaining power, still having power, and being able to leave at any time. But Badi was more domineering than he imagined. He said directly that the money of his subordinates was his money, and my money was still his money. There was no reason to argue. Tobias Wheel was stunned for a moment, then he returned to normal, lowered his head, narrowed his eyes, and said, "Yes, boss, I also have some personal assets that I can provide to you." He said this calmly, as if he was doing his best to serve the boss. Badi sipped his coffee and leaned back on the soft sofa. Tobias Wheel must be dissatisfied. No matter who he is, he would be very dissatisfied. He did not turn over directly, which proved that he was indeed a big shot. Of course, it also proved that people are actually afraid of death. Badi glanced at him and said, "Don't be so narrow-minded. The entire metropolis is my base. Don't think you will still have power here. I will radiate from here to the entire United States. You should prepare yourself. In the near future, I will transform you, and you will go to California to control Coast City. Bruno will also contribute 80% of the funds. He will be in Star City, not far from you. In the future, who can control the entire California depends on who is more capable between you and Bruno. I have many positions under me. It depends on how far you can go. Of course, I don't mind your rebellion. You should consider your position well." Chapter 99 Secretary. Noah Technology Park. Universe Biotechnology Co. Limited. The sun shines brightly on the reflective glass windows, and the white building stands tall, clean, beautiful, and innovative. Badi walked in here. He came back from the Tyrant entertainment area in the south and directly drained the original 100 million funds of the international gang and the organization, leaving only the basic operation and maintenance costs. Bruno and Tobias, who were supposed to be the second generation of gangsters, rebelled and promoted to the leaders of the gang. In an instant, Badi took away decades of capital, They were able to suppress their inner impulses and did not show the behavior of pulling out guns in front of Badi. They already have a good heart. Of course, Badi will not treat them badly. They will also be truly transformed by themselves and have special abilities. As long as they are loyal to Badi, living 200 or 300 years is not a problem. This is also what they expect, and no amount of money can buy it. They have no objection. Even if they have objections in their hearts, they dare not show it. Badi walked to the elevator, and there was already a woman with a good figure and a charming face, but she was wearing a secretary's professional suit and was waiting for him. She wore glasses on her foxy face, and her expression was serious. The contrasting expression and foxy face could easily arouse a man's bestiality. This was his secretary. When she saw Badi appear, her waist was straight and not swaying, which made people want to get close, squeeze in, and hold hands. She pushed her glasses with her hand, opened a notebook in her hand, and reported seriously. "Boss, other companies in our technology park rejected us. There will be a party at Galaxy Hotel at 8 o'clock tomorrow night." The secretary had a serious expression and a seductive voice. She closed the notebook with a snap. She had a sexy figure, and the secretary's outfit that was too tight set off her figure. She stood beside Badi and reported these two things without saying anything, showing a clean and neat style. "Party?" Badi asked doubtfully. He didn't remember agreeing to attend any party. "Yes," Mr. Luther said, "that the boss needs to attend. The party is held by the family. They are going to win over Universe Biotechnology Co. Limited to become a member of the family and divide up the profits." The secretary said, with her hands on her abdomen, upright and eye-catching, sexy and attractive, but also serious and solemn, with a unique temptation. "So that's it." Badi laughed dumbly. These capitalists really have beautiful ideas. Seeing that their own biopharmaceuticals have made huge profits, they can't wait to use all their capital power to win over and threaten to enter their group and divide up the profits. If nothing unexpected happens, and they don't agree, then the seemingly rising international group will be defeated from beginning to end by various bank loans, dealer blockades, hospital blockades, channel control, and even strict investigations and crackdowns by the Food and Drug Administration. The former Noah company of Noah Technology Park was actually swallowed up and divided by the family together. It's no wonder that Badi wanted to acquire other technology companies in Noah Technology Park, but none of them could be acquired, even if they offered a price twice the market value. They have been a group of family for a long time. "Well, we just need funds and land to build the headquarters of the group." Badi nodded, completely ignoring the serious beauty beside him, and stepped into the elevator. This elevator leads to the underground negative floor, and only Badi has the right to pass through. She did not follow, and her posture was slightly bent. Her devilish figure was submissive and extra attractive. It was not until the elevator was completely merged and Badi disappeared in front of her that she straightened her waist again, and her eyes flashed with cold light. She was no longer the serious secretary just now, but now she was a bit murderous. She lifted her glasses, and the eyes in the glasses were full of dissatisfaction and murderous. She thought Badi was just pretending. She had studied Badi's character in depth, and she was sure that her serious, yet seductive office secretary, and the aura of wanting to refuse, was the most fatal temptation to him. "No one can escape from my hands. Boss, with your character, after the party, it is also the time for your life to end." She smiled lightly, and when she turned around, she had a serious expression, standing aside, waiting for the boss. The elevator stopped at the underground first floor, which was a transfer floor. There was nothing on this floor for his research, but it was cleared out by Badi to place some urgently needed instruments, which could be found here. He got out of the elevator and walked straight across the white mud floor. The soft touch of his feet was a space with cleaning efficiency and a slight smell of disinfectant. He walked down the stairs. The underground second floor was Badi's main biological culture site. The space inside was white, with sealed glass covers erected one after another. It was exactly the same as the biological research in the movies, where people were locked up and filled with green nutrient solution. The lights suddenly lit up, and the incandescent lamps illuminated the place as bright as day. The air here was full of a slightly clean disinfectant smell, and the normal temperature was maintained at around 10 degrees. There was a slight cold air spraying cold mist from the air conditioning tank. These 2 bottles of blood. Hera, give me a controllable strengthening research plan. Badi took out 2 test tubes from his pocket. When he finished speaking, 2 simple mechanical arms clamped the test tubes above his head and took them directly for testing, experimenting, and calculating the best plan. Okay, Master. The hidden subconscious guidance spores have been completed, Master. Hera's figure was graceful, and her red dress exuded a passionate atmosphere. She appeared beside Badi. Badi raised his eyebrows and his eyes flashed. Hidden subconscious guidance spores are a kind of consciousness spores that are hidden in the brain and blend with brain cells. Once they are hidden, they will silently guide people's consciousness in the direction of recording. It makes people feel that it is their own thoughts and decisions, without a single flaw. This is different from Sam Ryan's subconscious transformation. Sam Ryan's is a bit hasty after all, and there are certain sequelae which can only be eliminated by waiting for a long time. And this hidden subconscious guidance spore is a perfect version. The only flaw is that this kind of hidden subconscious guidance spore needs a long period of lurking, accumulating for a long time, at least 5 to 10 years, before it can be integrated into the brain cells. This has an inestimable weight for Badi to control the upper class of the United States, the President, Congress, and most of the military regime. In the future, the United States will gradually undergo many changes, and this change is imperceptible, moving towards the development path that Badi wants. Chapter 100 arrived on Earth. Badi pondered and looked at the hidden subconscious guiding spores in front of him with deep thoughts. The spores were like dandelions, very small, and were contained in green bottles that were smaller than half of the size of the little finger. He only had 27 bottles. This kind of spores belonged to a kind of macrobrain cell isomorphic spores, which could fuse with brain cells. They were made by collecting blood from the original owner and monitoring the temperature and environment with Hera at all times to simulate the human brain. He pondered for a while and entered the command he wanted to set. He knew that the next few leaders of the country could act and do too much. For example, he could set up an official organization like the Sky Society. Even Area 51 in the Red Room would basically not be able to get out of his 5 fingers in the future. From then on, Badi would not need to deploy. If nothing unexpected happened, the people he had infiltrated into Congress would be enough and qualified to become the new senior officials. At that time, he would officially wrap the entire country in it. After decades of deployment, even if there were many superheroes, it would be impossible to clean up his deployment at will. On the contrary, all the superheroes under the entire country would be under his surveillance. Badi didn't want to play with a group of self-righteous superheroes. What he needed was the entire Earth. Later, Badi set up many military and political generals. He knew about the country's past leaders. After all, they were very well known, but he knew nothing about the country's future generals, admirals, and people in Congress and Parliament. He could only rely on Sam Lane's memory and speculate on investing in some young and capable young people who have the opportunity to rise to power in the future. Especially people like Steve Trevor and Amanda Waller. Badi admired them very much, but they were still young, and they might have to wait until the Justice League appeared and Wonder Woman came out on Paradise Island before they could officially appear on the world stage. When the entire input was set up, it was already 2 hours later, and it was still not all done. It was necessary to guide these hidden subconscious spores into their bodies through the mouth to set the tone for the future. After doing all this, Badi breathed a sigh of relief and glanced at Hera. Bruno and Tobias' blood was still being analyzed and strengthened by controllable simulation. It couldn't be done so quickly, so Badi left the underground second floor and went to the underground first floor, took the elevator, and went up to the surface. Next to the elevator, the secretary was waiting with her back straight. The difference between her serious expression and her seductive face was very big. She was serious and very beautiful and charming. When Badi came out, he saw not only the secretary, but also little Luther sitting and waiting. After 2 weeks of high-intensity work, little Luther completely understood that his little cleverness was still not up to par, no matter in all aspects. However, he has wisdom beyond ordinary people. He was a little flustered at the beginning, but now he has gradually adapted to the complex situation. He is no longer flustered and has no time to sleep. Seeing Badi appear, little Luther also came forward, his eyes a little tired. Badi saw little Luther passing by and suddenly felt that he was a child abuser. Before Luther could speak, Badi glanced at the secretary and said, "Tomorrow night, go to my room." Luther narrowed his eyes and glanced at the secretary beside him. She was plump and tall. For a man, yes, she was very attractive. Too attractive. There was something wrong with this secretary. Luther had to come up with an answer based on Badi's behavior in an instant. "Okay, boss." Luther looked at the secretary coldly for a while, and after hearing the sound of high heels far away, he said, "Is there something wrong with her?" Badi put his big hand on Luther's head and began to rub his hair. He smiled and said, "No." Luther didn't believe it. "Sometimes you need to observe more yourself." Badi said again that Luther's talent in business, strategy, and even science was very insightful and should not be underestimated, but he was still young. Facing such a killer who specialized in disguise, it was normal that he had no experience and could not see through it. He seemed to have overestimated Luther and looked at him with the mature Luther in the comics. Badi smiled and shook his head, rubbing his head. "He still needs to grow up again." Little Luther nodded. The more he got along with Badi, the more he felt Badi's vast knowledge, which seemed to be endless, and benefited him a lot. "Mike said that there is news about what you arranged for him to do, boss." Little Luther said. Badi's smiling face suddenly stopped. His body stopped for a moment, and then he climbed up like a sleeping Tyrannosaurus, emitting a terrifying pressure. His eyes suddenly burst into surprise, as if there was a strong flame of desire refracted in them. "Joel, your son has also come to Earth. This is really great." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.